Right. Hello and welcome to episode 62 of the ReptiChat podcast. I'll warn you now, this is the start of probably at least 3 or 4 herping related episodes. If it's not your thing, either go away or listen and make it your thing, because we are in for a treat of some stories today. As usual, let's do a few bits of housekeeping before we get started. We are going to start today with this. Right. Hello. Welcome. It's me, Ben, from the past, doing an advert. Pre-recorded it. It's going to be so much better than normal. So, as I am sure you are aware, today's video is sponsored by Bobby of Rango's Tats. For some reason, there seems to be a link between reptile keepers and people that have tattoos. I don't know where this love for ink and scales comes from, but the majority of reptile keepers have tattoos. And that is why Bobby of Rango's Tats has decided to support the pod for the next few months. Bobby is based over in Bishop Stortford, which is near Stansted Airport, at a studio called Obsidian Ink. I've actually got 3 tattoos from Bobby, and each and every one of them has blown my expectations out of the water. If you're a reptile keeper that likes tattoos, or a tattoo enthusiast that likes reptiles, head over Rango's Tats on Instagram. Start your message with the word ReptiChat. Hopefully you've enjoyed my new advert. Back to the podcast. Enjoy. Wow, thanks, Past Ben. Amazing. I need a haircut again, but the hair in that advert is much worse. Talking of bad hair, we are in some cracking photos today, but we'll get on to that. Next thing, you may have seen on Instagram, where Species clothing, whatever you want to call it, is now live. The clothing brand that I've been working tirelessly on since probably September 2024 is now live. It is available via pre-order only. So if you want one, you need to buy it before the 28th of February at 8 p.m. GMT. After the pre-order closes, I will then start making them, because every single garment is handmade by myself. This one, Species Bold, there is a grass snake on the back of it, but you can't see it. Hoodie down here, let me try and show you. There we go, adder. I took this adder photograph and then had it stylized. This grass snake on the back of this t-shirt that you can't see, Aidan Beverton took it. He was on the podcast not that long ago. They're sick. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different designs in t-shirts, I think. 2 different colorways. There's hoodies, and there's ReptiChat merch if you want the Gill and I t-shirt and you didn't manage to grab it before. And there's also Rid the Reptiles merch, Paul's Monitors merch, and merch from Kim's Wellness Space. So www.wearspecies.co.uk. Go and check it out. And then Patreons. You guys are on screen now. If you are a Patreon member, you get extra special discount codes to Species, and it covers everything on the website. Not only that, you get access to a Discord, and you let to know stuff before anybody else does. You get to know what guests are coming on. There's usually a Q&A for guests as well. So yeah, lots of exclusive stuff. Starts at £1 a month. As always, there is a free trial for 7 days as well. So there's a link in the description for that if you want to check it out. I think that is all the housekeeping. Let's just do a quick check in the comments, and then we will get today's guest on. So who have we got? Dendro Dave. Let's go. Hey Ben. Hey Dave. Thank you very much for tuning in. Silver Webbers. Howdy to you too. Dave, lovely to have you here. Thank you very much. Josh, nice to see you make it, mate. Lovely to have you here. Dan, late gang. You're only just late, Dan. It's fine. Thank you for tuning in. The adder one is fire. They are all fire. Honestly, I don't mean to blow my own trumpet, but I am so impressed with what I have managed to create. And hopefully when you guys start to receive your orders, you will be as equally impressed, and you'll be like, oh, damn, son, I need to get some more of those. Right. Anyway. Today's pod is a little bit different from usual because there's going to be lots of visual aids. So if you're listening on Spotify for this episode and this episode only, I have actually uploaded the video to Spotify, so you can nip in and out and look at the photos that we are talking about with my guest today. And talking of guests, he's been on the pod before. He is everywhere on the internet. He's a man that is helping fight the good fight. I can't find the button to push, so I'm still rambling for just a second. Please welcome Tony from Responsible Reptile Keeping. thank you very much for coming on, mate.
Hey, that's quite an intro. I feel quite.
We got to hype it up a bit. And as you've been on before, we're not going to do the quickfire questions because you've answered the quickfire questions. We know that you prefer dogs over cats, and we probably know your favourite biscuit, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have gone back and had a look because that would have been extra prepared. But 20 minutes ago, I didn't try and remember. Yeah, I'm sure you know. And if the people want to know, they'll have to go back and listen to the other episode. So, Tony, you are here today to tell us all about your herping experiences, I guess, throughout the life. There's been many, but before we get into that, because that is like our main topic of the day, we'll just do a quick 10-minute chat about RRK and the Worldwide Super Survey, because why not? So can you give us a quick synopsis of what RRK is, and then tell us a bit about the Worldwide Super Survey?
Yes, for sure. And then I'll also give you some news that nobody else knows about if you fancy a bit of exclusive.
We love an exclusive on the ReptiChat podcast.
Cool news. RRK, what are we? So over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, reptile keeping is improved. Welfare is improved, husbandry is improved, but we still get loads of hassle from animal rights campaigners. Why is this? Well, considering we're so good at keeping reptiles now compared with other pets, and considering there's so many organizations that are doing really important work lobbying for our rights to keep reptiles and lobbying against unfair legislation and lobbying to represent responsible keeping, why are we still having trouble with crazy laws that ridiculously ban reptile keeping? Well, our view is because animal rights campaigners have control of the narrative. For the last 15 years, they've been saying what they like about us on social media and on the mainstream media, and nobody's really done anything about it. We've just been over here enjoying our animals, letting animal rights campaigners say what they like about us. And what that's done is that's fueled most people with this idea that reptile keeping is bad and bad for the environment, bad for invasive species, bad for welfare, and we're all going to get eaten by our animals. And of course, that's not true. So, what responsible reptile keeping is, in a nutshell, is we are a dedicated media department for the international reptile community. So we're an international organization, we're a membership organization. You can join us and support us, but we produce videos, podcasts, interviews, documentaries, magazines, articles, all kinds of media that shows the truth about reptile keeping and not just the nice stuff. We're not just talking about, oh, aren't we all wonderful and we never make any mistakes. We also look at husbandry issues. So we've covered obesity, we've covered salmonella, we've covered invasive species and releasing new animals into the wild being such a stupid idea. So really, we're advocates for exactly what it says on the tin, responsible reptile keeping. So that's transpired into a couple of different projects. The first one you know about is the Worldwide Reptile Super Survey. And this has been running since January. It runs till March. If you haven't filled it in yet, please do so. It's really, really, really important. I can't say really often enough.
Yeah,
it's
there
just
should be a link
really
down
important.
below. If there isn't, I will put it there afterwards because I think I have, but I can't remember.
So the Worldwide Reptile Super Survey was born of the knowledge that we have lots of different bits of data and evidence and statistics in the UK. There's a couple of surveys that run. We've got organisations that give us information, and we know how many people keep reptile, how many species of reptile they keep, how many reptiles they keep, where they got them from, where they bought them from, whether they're captured, bred, or wild caught, what they keep them in, do they breed them, all these different bits of information. We have it, but we only have it in the UK. Now, this has been a problem for us because we're an international organisation. So we were just sick of saying, oh, in the UK this and in the UK that. We need that information from many different countries, and we try to find it. And they've got little bits of information in different countries, but they haven't got the type of data and comprehensive information and evidence that we've got. So we took the best survey out there, the Federation of British Herpetologists. We repurposed it to be a bit easier to fill in, a bit more sexy, a bit more distilled and comprehensive, and sorry, distilled and succinct. And we launched it in January, and we've been getting thousands and thousands of people are filling it in from all over the world. I'll tell you now that the Americans are winning, just about. The Americans have
Oh,
filled more surveys than us. And if we're going to hold our own and do as well as we have in previous years with the FBH's survey, we need more British people to fill it in. But to be frank, wherever you are in the world, whatever animals you've got, reptiles or amphibians, we need you to fill it in. And what this will do is it will give us data that we can provide to the advocacy organisations all over the world, like USARC, etc. They don't have this information that we have. They'd love to have this information. It's really, really valuable when we're talking to politicians and lawmakers and journalists. In the survey, give us that information. Let us know. Oh, you've got a cup of tea.
I've got a can of Coke.
Even better. Kind of Coke. So the selection is open the door. Pass that's really cool. Right. So anyway, that's the survey. We really need people to fill it in. I can't tell you how important that is. That's absolutely vital. So we'll have more evidence for different organisations around the world to use, but there's also something in it for you. Firstly, every single person who fills it in will get a digital subscription to our Responsible Reptile Keeping magazine. Everybody, just fill it in, you get a subscription. But secondly, there's a chance for you to win prizes. You can win $500, $300, or $100. And I should very much like to stress that this survey has been sponsored by 3 companies who really, really understand our mission and really, really support what we do. That's ZooMed, Floterra, and Arcadia. Those are the companies that are really on our side, amongst many others that you'll find on our website. But those 3 companies put up some cash and some funding to help support it. So support those companies, but more important than anything, fill in the survey. And here today, I can give you an exclusive.
Fantastic. Go on. We love an exclusive.
The biggest threat to reptile keepers at the moment, and especially in Europe, but coming to America as well, is the positive list. And if you don't know what a positive list is, a positive list is the same as a white list. And a white list is the opposite of a blacklist. So a blacklist is a list of things that you aren't allowed to do. It's things that are disallowed. So a white list is a list of things that you are allowed. And as the holy grail of animal rights campaigning is to produce a positive list, a very short list of animals that you're allowed to keep. Norway has one. It's just 19 species of animal. Positive lists are an absolute disaster for herpetology, for welfare, for invasive species issues, for illegal trading, everything. Everywhere positive lists have been put in place, illegal trade skyrockets and animal welfare plummets, because what we know is if an animal is banned or if there's a large scale ban on animal keeping, people just ignore the law and go underground and keep these animals anyway. So if you're keeping an animal illegally, you can't come to me and ask me for advice. We can't go to Ben and ask him for advice because we're keeping animals illegally. And worst of all, you can't take those animals to a vet. So we've been campaigning against positive lists now for over 2 years. And that campaign has now been taken to a whole new level. We're about to launch a petition against positive lists so that we can inform governments and anybody else who listen around the world that positive lists are a really, really bad idea. The only reason anybody would want a positive list is if they want to unjustly stop people from keeping reptiles. So that's what we're doing. We're about to launch the petition. It might take us a week or so to get it online, but you'll soon see a campaign, and we need you to fill in the survey. And then when that's launched, we need you to sign the petition against a positive list. This is the only way we can get our voices heard. So there you go. That's us in a nutshell.
Fantastic. That was pretty good. You smashed that. You said you'd be in about 10 minutes, and that was pretty much spot on.
Oh, nice one.
Fantastic.
And if you want me to.
No, that's fine. It's all right. Anybody that has listened to Paul's podcast recently or Riddler's podcast recently with Tony on, you will know that they were donating any super chats they got throughout the episode to Responsible Reptile Keeping. I don't have the privilege of being able to receive super chats because I don't have enough subscribers. However, the first link in the show notes below is a link to PayPal where you can donate directly to Responsible Reptile Keeping, and that way YouTube and Apple don't take any of the money. So it all goes straight to RRK. So if you want to ping over some pennies, it all helps do the good stuff. So there we go.
Thank you.
And I will
Can I
remind you
No.
occasionally throughout the episode to go and do that. But let's take that off the screen for now, because Tony, we have got to put some other things on the screen. Firstly, this. So you are here today, Tony, obviously to tell us about all sorts of herping adventures. And I have got a list in front of me. And you have very kindly sent me a whole bunch of photographs that I am going to try and share on screen as well. So let's do a little introduction. As I think I've got two here, maybe three. Where? Yeah, there we go. Check that.
That's probably the earliest one. That's the earliest one. So I'm not even embarrassed about this photo.
No, you shouldn't be. If anything, dungarees are back in fashion. Like it's a look. Let's put it that way. So, where did your like herping adventures start? What was the first one that you can remember? Tell us a bit about this photo as well. Where was this?
Yeah, well, I suppose the introduction to this whole kind of set of stories is that I really do not deserve to have had the experiences that I've had. I don't have the credentials or the expertise to have been able to find a place and to be invited on some of the adventures that I've had. Every road trip I've been on really has come off the back of me knowing somebody who knows somebody who's far more important than I am and far more connected and relevant than I am. And it sort of started here where this photograph was taken. This photograph was taken at a place called the Serpentarium, which in Warsaw back in the 80s and 90s was the biggest reptile house in Europe for sure, and possibly the world, but definitely the biggest reptile house in Europe. We had several thousand animals there at any one time, and even more than that in the breeding season. It was just at the Paul's monitors donated. Look, I don't care what you say about him. He's all right, you know.
He's a good lad.
He's all right, eh? But yeah, the Serpentarium was a massive reptile house. We had everything that was worth having, really serious animals that probably today are a commonplace, and maybe it's because we bred them and we cultivated them there. But it was the century of the universe for reptile keepers. This was me round about 1987, I think it was. And that is a Nyakuthia, a spectacled cobra, that I'm not free handling because actually it was venomoid. It had its venom glands removed, which was a thing back in the day that we can't sort of advocate for nowadays for sure. But this was a venomoid Akuthia. But we had thousands upon thousands of animals there. Just behind me, you can see those little wooden boards on the left. So that was covering up a set of blood pythons that we had that were a bit crazy down there. And in those vivs behind me, we had green tree pythons back in the late 80s. And we also had in the other enclosures, just by my elbow, if I remember rightly, my favorite white-lip pythons and also Sanzinia Madagascan tree boas. So, you know, that's in a small one single photograph. We've got some pretty cool animals there. But that's where I met anybody who is anybody in reptile keeping. And that's how I got invited into all these experiences and reptile field trips that, you know what, somebody of my status really shouldn't have had access to. But there you go, we did. It was cool.
Fantastic. And then we should probably address this one as well, because you're pretty terrified looking at that picture.
You know, that was both. And that was interesting. We had loads of cool stuff, but when the guy who ran it died, a guy called Dave Lester, God rest his soul, the godfather of reptile keeping in the UK and Europe at the time. When he died, I got offered another job. Thank you, Dendro Dave. You're a good chap. when Dave died, I had to go and get another job, and I got a job at this reptile house in the centre of, well, in one of the towns outside Birmingham, and it was just a boring old pet shop full of leopard geckos and bearded dragons. And yeah, they're I appreciate a nice leopard gecko and a bearded dragon and a corn snake, but I really did have hankering for cool stuff. So I'd usually have one vivarium that had a cool animal in it, and this was the cool animal at the time. This was the Corallus hydris, I think it is, Amazon tree boa.
Yeah.
And
Thank you
thanks,
again, Elder
Dave.
Dave. Thank you.
And yeah, that was like how much fun my reptile keeping got to be at that point. And it was it's a good place. It was a nice place, but we had to have some cool stuff. But yeah, I put that in there just for my hairdo, really.
The hair is impressive. Actually, looking through the photos, the hairstyles go from like down past your nipples to buzz cuts and everything in between, and I love
Yeah,
it.
that's some haircuts. I haven't got any photos of me with a bright pink Mohican, which did in fact happen in the mid-80s.
I don't doubt that for a second. Cool. Right. Let's move
Yeah.
on to we're sort of in chronological order. So we're going to start with Grand Canaria. So let me find the
Yeah, and
Grand Canaria folder, and you can tell us a bit about that. You got some bullet points. The first bullet point is finding wild reptiles.
yeah, the interesting thing about Gran Canaria, and this set of photos, and you'll see a photo later on, fair enough, but I should have put a photograph in here of my buddy Jim Puffer, who's basically been my reptile mentor since Dave Lester died. He's a miserable old fart. Thank you, Catfish Reptiles.
Cheers,
Um,
Tatty.
he's he's a miserable old fart, but he really knows his animals, and he basically emigrated to Gran Canaria before I even met him and set up a reptile zoo over there called Reptilandia. And one of my first trips to Reptilandia, I was amazed at some of the animals he was not only managing to keep alive, but he was also able to breed them. And I was like, Dave, Jim, how do you breed these animals? We can't even keep them alive. And he says, it's dead easy. What we do is we dig a hole in the side of the mountain and build a wall around it. And then we throw the animals in and then they breed. I was like, that easy? He says, yeah, because we've got two things that you haven't got in England. He says, we've got sunshine, vitamin D3, and we've got loads of wild flying insects that fly in and give us nutritional variation. He says, and we can do things over here that you just can't do in the UK, which was largely true at the time. We were only just learning how UV light worked with reptiles, and we had very rudimentary UV lights.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my introduction to Jim Peffer. And since then, I've been back and forth to Gran Canaria a few times. So yeah, this is George. George is the one with the shell, by the way.
Yeah.
The lady on the left is my wife, Vicky, and the lady on the right is Jim's wife, Chris. And George is a 250-kilogram Aldabra tortoise. It's a bit of a sex pest because every day that we've stayed at Jim's place, George has got this massive paddock that he could roam around, but he just decides to mate females outside our window at 7 o'clock in the morning. So 7 o'clock every morning, you've got George grunting and creaking on top of a female, which I'm sure he does on purpose.
It is quite the noise that they make as well. I can't imagine that's a particularly nice noise to wake up to.
And I was looking at the video that I've got because you've got George pumping and groaning on top of her, and then he'd let out this enormous belch, and it's just disgusting. But anyway, that's George. He's got about half a dozen of these Aldabra tortoises, and you have to watch your step because they will bite you on the ass if you're not looking. And it's not nice to be bitten by an Aldabra on the ass, I can tell you.
Yeah,
But,
I've been we've got horse fields, and I've been bitten by them, and they're this big, and that hurts enough. I wouldn't want to be bitten by an Aldabra.
yeah, it's not nice. But yeah, Jim's one of the few people to breed Komodo dragons, which you can see in one of the other photos. This is Slash, and when Jim first got Slash, I was over there working for him, and we built him this enormous enclosure. It was so big, it was really good because we were able to work in the enclosure as long as Slash was sufficiently far away that we could definitely run and get out if he ran over, because we didn't really know him at the time when he was first brought in. And it wasn't until we introduced the female into the enclosure Thanks,
Thank you very much,
Josh.
Josh.
It wasn't until we introduced a female into the enclosure and we watched Slash chase the female around that we realized we had never been out of range when we'd been working in the enclosure. He had always been fast enough to get us if indeed he had wanted to, but thankfully we got away with that. So that's pretty good. So it's really nice to be able to visit Jim and hang out at his reptile zoo where he keeps everything from Komodos and Cuban crocodiles, just everything you can ever wish to keep, he's had there. And what used to happen was when Jim wanted to go away on holiday, obviously the amount of people that you can call to say, come and babysit my Komodos and crocodiles and transplant your whole life over to Gran Canaria for a few weeks. There's not many people who can just like take 3 weeks off and come and move to Gran Canaria and be equipped and experienced enough to look after those animals. So again, I just, piggyback Jim's expertise and have these really awesome experiences. As an interesting side note to finding wild reptiles in Gran Canaria, the last photo is invasive Lampropeltis getula Californian king snakes.
I don't know if I've got that picture on here. I only got 3 in this folder. I
Yeah,
might
that's
have
it.
put it
Me
in a
with the
different one.
shades on.
Oh, this one here, yeah.
No, it's me with the shades on.
There we go.
So that's an invasive Lampropeltis getula California, the Californian king snake. And these are invasive in Gran Canaria. And this is the reason why Lampropeltis getula, all of Lampropeltis getula, not just Calis, are banned across the whole of Europe. Now, Gran Canaria is actually closer to continental Africa than it is to continental Europe. So the idea that these animals could survive in most places in Europe is absolutely ridiculous. But nonetheless, Campaigning from Animal Rights Campaigners has banned them across the whole of Europe now. We're only exempt because of Brexit. But you can't keep these anywhere in Europe anymore, even if it's cold like, Poland or, Sweden. It's
Yeah,
madness.
yeah.
And interestingly, there's 2 populations in Gran Canaria. The one in the north of the island, where Jim's zoo is up in the north. The one in the north of the island is the normal ones that look like this. But the population that's invasive in the south of the island is albino. So there's these pink and white albino snakes that are invasive in Gran Canaria. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine being on for example, being on holiday and seeing a bright pink and white Californian king snake go across your beach.
Yeah, it's madness, but yeah, that's what they are. And there is talk of them eating the native lizards, Galotia stellini, and all the other native lizards. Um, I I haven't seen any data, but I dare say they are. But I think a bigger problem for native lizards is cats. If you ever go to Gran Canaria or any of the other Canarian islands,
Yeah.
you'll see thousands of feral cats, and I'm pretty sure they get hold of far more native lizards than the snakes do.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. Oh, yeah, I
so
wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised at that at all.
it was also down to Jim that I got a job helping to open a zoo in Lanzarote. They were opening a new zoo called Rancho Texas, and I was part of the team there that sourced a lot of the animals for that zoo. So that was a cool project.
Exciting stuff and lovely weather as well. So
Yeah,
can't
it was
say no
great.
to that.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Cool. So that I think pretty much sums up Gran Canaria, doesn't it? That's a nice little introduction into the bits and bobs you've been doing. We've got a few on the list that you've sent me that I don't think we've got photos for. So I don't know if you want to do a quick summary. The next one being Gambia/Senegal.
yeah. So I grew up at the Serpentarium reading the Vivarium magazine and reading about all the experiences that my reptile heroes went on, Philip de Vaugelet and Bob Applegate and Bob Clark and Mark O'Shea and Jim Pether as well. And all my all my heroes were going off and doing these super awesome trips to crazy far off places. And I was just some poor kid from a housing estate in the Black Country. And of course, it was way beyond my means to ever even think about doing these crazy trips anywhere. But in 1997, I decided that me and my girlfriend at the time were going to go on holiday somewhere cool. And we managed to find some cheap flights to the Gambia. And looking back, I did everything wrong.
Right.
The first thing we did is we just bought flights. We didn't have any hotel booked. We didn't have any tour guides. It was only the second time I'd ever been abroad. The first time was going to visit Jim in Gran Canaria. So my second trip ever was to West Africa, which in retrospect is pretty foolish. But so we got on this plane, and it was before they even had a terminal, I think, in the Gambia. The Gambia's terminal in Banjul got built in 1997, but when we were there, it was just a load of sheds at a building site. And when they took your luggage off the plane, they just pushed it out the side of the plane into a pile, right? And we got trapped on the plane while this organized tour there's this tour company called the Senegambia Experience, and basically they pick up all these middle-aged people and kind of chaperone them through Africa. So they all got to pick up their bags, and they got on a coach, and we got off the plane like, where are we? It's red hot. We don't know where we're going. We need a taxi. We need to pick our bags up, and we just got left to it. And the first thing I saw was this guy trying to grab my bag. So being I was, well, I was a young guy, so I pushed him and took my bag off him and ran after to grab my girlfriend's bag as well. And he was like, "No, no, no, we're not trying to steal money from you. We're just trying to earn $1 carrying your bag." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I think I can find my own taxi." So I started looking around for a taxi, and there wasn't any taxis. There was loads of like really shit cars that were beat up and abandoned and derelict, but there wasn't any taxis. So I was looking around for a taxi. And after about 5 minutes of not being able to find a taxi, this guy comes back up to me again. He's like, "Look, give me $1. I'll carry your bags and you'll find a taxi." So I was like, I looked at him and he looked honest enough. So I gave him the bags and he was like, "Follow me." So I followed him to one of these derelict cars that did definitely not have an MOT, that did not look like they should move. And he put our things in the car and we got in, and it was a bit like the Flintstones because I could see the floor through this taxi.
And Josh says that sounds like Luton. You're not wrong.
So we're in this taxi, and I'm like, shit, this is a whole new world. I thought I knew what a taxi was. And we're driving down this really crazy road that's just like full of potholes, and he's weaving from one side to the other. Cars are coming at us, and he's just weaving and hitting his horn. I'm like, damn, I hope we get on the main road soon. Little did I know that was the main road, and it only got worse, and it was awful. There wasn't a seatbelt. There wasn't a window. That we were just sat in this taxi, and my poor girlfriend who had no idea how to that the world outside Birmingham existed. Was like wide-eyed. And so in that first 5 minutes in the Gambia, I learned what a taxi was, which I thought I already knew. I learned what a road was, which I thought I already knew. We learned what a house was, and we learned what a shop was, because all of these things just did not look the same.
Thank
Thanks,
you very much,
Wayne.
Wayne.
So yeah, at this point you can realise we didn't have a hotel. Yeah, we'd got a Lonely Planet. So we flipped through the Lonely Planet and we looked for a hotel, and we were both vegetarian at the time. I was vegetarian for 20 years, by the way, but I'll come back to that when we reach Madagascar. So we
Yeah.
flipped through the Lonely Planet, and we found this one hotel that sold vegetarian food. So we went there. Yeah. And the lady who ran the hotel was lovely. She was an English lady who actually knew a friend of mine who I worked with, believe it or not, crazy, again, Africa.
It's a small
And she
world
knew
sometimes,
this.
isn't it?
It was madness, but I think it was like fate or omens or something, because she basically looked after us. We were so out of our league. And I'd go back at the end of the day and I'd say, "I've seen loads of men holding hands, and I don't understand this. What's happening?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's just a thing over here. Men who are friends hold hands. That homosexuality doesn't exist as far as we're aware, but men just routinely hold hands." Okay, okay, I understand this now. And then we were like, "We've seen lots of men screaming at each other, and it's quite frightening." And she was like, "Yeah, that's just how things are. You will never see anybody fight because violence that the consequences of violence are so high that people don't fight, but they like to shout. And
Yeah.
shouting at each other is kind of standard communication. So all of these things that we didn't understand, we got dumped into the middle of Africa, and thankfully we had somebody on the ground who could help us. In terms of animals that we saw, I went over there on the recommendation of another one of my reptile heroes, which is Luke Yeomans. You'll probably remember him as the venomous guy. King Cobra
Yeah.
is the only guy in Britain ever to be killed by his venomous animal. He was killed by his King Cobra. But I knew him for about 25, 30 years. And he'd just come back from the Gambia when we booked it. And he says, it's awesome. Go to this reptile park, go to this, what is it? National Reserve, yeah, National Park.
Yeah.
He says, and while you're looking at the ground for the cobras, you're missing the mambas in the trees. And while you're looking for the mambas, you're missing the cobras. Okay, so we went there, we saw nothing. We saw nothing. We saw a few frogs and we saw a few LBJs. Have you ever seen an LBJ?
I think so.
You have done. LBJ stands for little brown jobby. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
hundreds of little brown jobbies, hundreds of little geckos. We didn't see any snakes. We hardly saw any lizards, and we saw a few frogs. Firstly, because it was the wrong time of the year. We'd gone when it was still relatively cold. And secondly, and most importantly, this is something I'll come back to. And it's my best piece of advice for you if you're going to go on a herping trip. That piece of advice is make sure you've got a good fixer in the region that you're going to. Make sure you're going with somebody who knows the landscape, knows the traditions, knows the law, but most importantly, knows the animals. Every trip I've been on where we didn't have a fixer, I've seen nothing. Under my own volition, under my own intelligence and ability and skill, I have seen nothing. Everything I have
But
seen has been because somebody else did it for me.
that is a bit of a worry because in about 30 days, myself, Paul, and a few other friends are off to Morocco for 5 days to go and see what we can find. Two of my friends are quite knowledgeable, have done a lot of herping in Thailand, like Philippines, that sort of area. So they've got
Yeah,
a good eye for it. Having never been to Morocco, we'll see how it goes. I think it's more driving, looking for the wells and cisterns more than being out in the sands, hoping we find stuff. But yeah, we shall see.
yeah, and there is something to be said for people who have this kind of natural ability or long-standing experience of field herping, which I don't have. I have a handful of jollies overseas where I spend 2 weeks looking for something and finding nothing until somebody points it out for me. That's essentially my experience, except for once, which is the greatest achievement any field herper can ever wish for. And that was mine. I did that one thing where I found that one snake when everybody wanted to see it and I found it. Yeah, that's
Nice.
once it's happened. But anyway, we'll come to that. But yeah, I mean, field herping in Gambia was, we saw hardly anything. The the best experience I had there, the most interesting experience. So I used to box when I was younger. I wasn't very good at it. I should definitely be uglier than I am because I got my ass kicked seriously. But I used to box, and while we were at this hotel, we met a guy who was a diamond driller, and he was really interesting. He only had half a hand because one day when he was mining, he picked up a steel cable, and somebody pressed the button and started the machine. The cable lifted him up and tore off all of his fingers.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he'd basically got a hand which he described as a, a pool ball in a sock,
Right, okay, yeah.
essentially. That was his hand. And he was into boxing as well. So he said, "Hey, at this hotel down the road where all the Senegambia experienced people are stay, they've got a boxing match, and it's the native Senegalese, Olympic Senegalese boxers against the Olympic Gambian boxers." And anybody who's been to that part of the world knows that the Gambia is probably the most, how can I explain it? The easiest African country to go to. You know, you go to the Gambia. It's not hardcore African, but the Senegal is a bit more hardcore. So we went to this hotel to watch a boxing match, and when we got there, there were 4 oil drums stood on a corner of a piece of carpet with 4x2 poles, wooden poles taped to them with gaffer tape and blue nylon rope around the outside. And the Gambian team came out in all their kit, and then the Senegalese guys came out with like wearing Dunlop green flat and one gun field between the six of them. They had no facilities, and me and this guy, the diamond driller that I found, spent our whole time holding the oil drums up as the boxers hit the ropes, and then at the end, the light middleweight, which was what I boxed at, the light middleweight guy, Gambian guy, came out, and he was a monster. He looked like he wanted to eat your spleen, basically. And the Senegalese guy came out and ran back into the changing rooms. But the promoter had found out through our conversations that I used to box, so he tried to get me to go in the ring and fight this light middleweight Olympic Senegalese guy, and I was like, not happening,
Never
not
happening. No.
happening at all. So that was that. And on the way back, we got stopped by the police. And usually you have to give them a bit of money to let you go. And he's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from England." He said, "Whereabouts?" I said, "Birmingham." He's like, "Birmingham? I love Birmingham. That's where UB40 are from. I love UB40. You can go on your way." So we got sent on our way because he loves UB40. So that was basically Gambia and the Senegal, which in retrospect was a good holiday, but for Herping, it was one of the guys we met was like, "If you give me 10 Delassie, which is like £2 or something, give me 10 Delassie, I will buy a net and we shall catch some snakes." It's like, how are you going to catch snakes with a net? Yeah, and this is the kind of thing you have to deal with while you're there. But yeah, that was Senegal, Gambia. If you ain't got a fixer, you ain't going to see anything.
That's good to know. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like a wild holiday, to be honest.
I must have been like, how old was I? It was 25, hardly ever left the country, didn't know shit, didn't know what I was doing, had no experience. Second time on an aeroplane. I don't know what I was doing in the Gambia, but I lived it, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. It was
Yeah.
they say when you've been to Africa, when you have the sand of Africa on your boots, you will feel the calling for it forever. And it's pretty true.
Nice. I'm really looking forward to our trip. I've not really been abroad. I've been to like Holland a few times for work. I went to America when I was a tiny child and went to Florida, but that's it. So going out to Morocco is I'm really looking forward to it, just to go and do something that I've never done before. But hopefully we'll find some reptiles as well. Otherwise it's going to be a pretty poor video.
I think Morocco is going to be awesome, whatever happens. I've never been, but of course, Morocco is very close to Gran Canaria, and I know that Jim goes over regularly. And apparently, according to him, and according to the people that have been to Morocco with him, Jim can apparently now go, turn that rock over, there'll be a eulastics under there. Turn that piece of wood over, there'll be. And my favourite lizard on the planet is from Morocco.
Go on, share. Hang on, let me try and guess.
I guess.
Is it a gecko species?
Yep.
Is it a Stenodactylus species?
Nope.
Oh, in which case, I know what it is. It's the helmeted gecko.
You got it. Yeah, helmeted gecko. It used to be called Geckonia chazalier. Now I think it's Tarantola chazalier. It's beautiful. Jim gave me some one year, and I brought them back to the UK and I bred them. And little did I know that they were really rare, really sought after.
I'm not sure if that's an insult or if he's telling me what type of gecko it is. Either way.
Yeah, bred these geckos. Little did I know that hardly anybody had got them. Hardly anybody was breeding them. And when I put them for sale online, people were like, "Look at them now," and I ended up selling them for hundreds of quid. And I was like, "Okay." And then I sold them all, and now you can't get them. And I wish I still had them because they're my favourites.
Yeah, I know that's one of the top species that a few of our guys want to find. So hopefully we'll be able to share some pictures with you.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah. I do love them.
Cool. Right, next one on the list, just a short one. This one, the year 2000, New Zealand. Have we got pictures for this one? I don't think we've got pictures.
No, we haven't. And the only reason we don't have pictures for Senegal and the Gambia is because this was before digital cameras. And I've got shitloads of slides and shitloads of photographs of them. They're all under the bed in an
Yeah.
album that I haven't looked at for years. And do you know the worst thing about Senegal Gambia? I took my slides. I'd taken slides because that's how you can only publish photos if you take slides. So I took loads of slides and I took them into the local photo development shop, which there used to be loads of years ago. And I was like, look, these are really important. This is the greatest holiday I've ever been on. This is the greatest experience of my life. Do not make a mess of these slides. Guess what they did? Made a mess of them. They developed them wrong and they all came out looking like some, I don't know. All the colors were wrong and it was just awful. I was so angry. I can't begin to tell you.
Yeah, that's not great. I'm just going to address that comment quickly. I have no control over the captions whilst we are live. I don't think so. Unless YouTube is offering them and you want to watch it with captions, you'll have to go back and watch it afterwards, and then YouTube should do them. But whilst it's live, I can do nothing about it. I don't think, unfortunately. Sorry, Fee.
Yeah,
Right.
is it because my accent is awful, or is it because I'm talking too fast? Could either one of those could be at the fault?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll keep an eye on the comments and if just see what she says. It's that,
Yeah,
or if some people just like having the subtitles on. My wife won't watch TV without the subtitles on now.
good
So
point.
yeah, if you need the captions, unfortunately, you have to come back and watch it not live. Whilst we've paused, actually, because there's a few new people in the chat. Thank you very much for coming along. If you want to donate to Responsible Reptile Keeping, there's a link in the show notes just below. It should be the top link. Because I don't have enough subscribers yet, I can't get super chats. But it does mean that any money you donate via PayPal, all the money goes direct to RRK. There's no YouTube fees, there's no Apple fees, there's none of that. So your 100% of your donation will go to RRK for the episode.
Thank
Let's
you very much.
carry. That's right, no worries. So next we have got New Zealand. And
Yeah,
the first
New
bullet point
Zealand.
is Tuataras.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand was just supposed to be a holiday. I'd kind of promised my girlfriend at the time that we weren't going to go looking for reptiles. And in fact, because of the time of year that we were going, we wouldn't see any reptiles anyway. It was cold. And New Zealand, unlike Australia, doesn't really have many cool reptiles. What it does have is tuatara. And I expect most of your viewers will already know, but if you ever saw a tuatara, it's basically a lizard. It's got 4 legs, it's got a tail, it's got spines on its back, it's got palinuli, and it eats insects. So what about it makes it not a lizard? Well, essentially, it's the shape of the skull and the different types of holes it's got in its skull, and the fact that they live to be a few hundred years and don't get sexually mature until they're 100, and exist at temperatures that are so cold it'll blow your mind. We went to this Southlands Museum to see them. Oh, Ridley didn't know. Of course not. He didn't know
Nah,
much.
he knows nothing. He's not even here.
No, he's not. He don't know. He wouldn't know anyway. But yeah, so we went to New Zealand in weather that was so cold that we were wearing hats and gloves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Tuatara exhibit at Southlands Museum was basically wire mesh, and these animals were active. It was crazy to see that these animals were active in those temperatures. And we met a guy. Oh, what was his name? Lindsay Hazley. Lindsay Hazley. He's basically the Tuatara godfather. And we were talking about Tuatara. He's not at Southlands Museum, but we managed to meet him. And he was doing some research into vitamin D3, which again in the early 2000s was relatively new research. But his research actually went over into humans as well. And he reckoned that the vitamin D3 played a huge role in human baby clot deaths. And I apologize if that's an issue that's affected you, but his research was talking about the fact that before this became a thing, children in nursing homes and maternity units were routinely taken outside and exposed to vitamin D3 as a routine from hell or high water. And it became a thing when children didn't go outside so much. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but he was emphatic about his research. And yeah, it's always kind of stuck with me, that story. And
Yeah.
so that's Lindsay Hazley for you. Really interesting guy.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Tuataras, very cool. Very, very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, big fan. Right, let's move on because this next one we have got many, many photographs. So let me bring them up. It's not that one. We're going to this one. Yeah. And we're gonna. I don't know which way we're gonna start. Should we start up this one?
No,
Or
let's start.
start the other end.
Let me have a look. So let's start with the one with me with a blue T-shirt holding two chameleons, and then I'll probably talk about how I got to this position first.
No
So,
worries. So where are we?
so we're on the most. No, we're probably in Tanna there. Tanna is the short name for a Madagascan capital, and Tanna or something. I can't even pronounce it.
That
Everybody
sounds like
calls
the
it
theme
Tanna,
tune for Batman.
something like that. But how I got there is we've been on the ground less than 5 minutes. We've been out of the taxi for less than 5 minutes when I found that. That's a panther chameleon and an Austerlitz chameleon that I found within 5 yards of each other. We hadn't even been out the taxi 5 minutes. I hadn't taken my bags in. We hadn't been in our room. We just found that. But how I got there is actually quite cool. So I'd been talking to Jim Pether for a while, saying, I really do want to go on an adventure with you. I hear about all these cool places that you go. Can I go on a cool adventure? And he'd say, where do you want to go? And I'd say, anywhere. And he'd say, well, come back when you've got a good idea and we'll talk about it. And that went on for a couple of years. And then eventually I asked him if we could go on an adventure. And he said, where do you want to go? And I said, Madagascar. He said, great, let's go. So we started planning our trip to Madagascar. And this already blew my mind. I was going to Madabloody-gascar with Jim Pether, the reptile herping experience godfather. He has been to more places than anybody else I know. To this day, I don't know anybody who's as well traveled and as well herped as he is. Yeah. I'm currently writing his autobiography with him as a ghostwriter, and the stories are amazing. So he's been everywhere. So the fact that I get to go to Madagascar with Jim Pether is just unbelievable. So at that point, we're talking about it and making plans. And he said, wouldn't it be good if we got to go to Madagascar with Bill Love? So you lot are all probably too young to remember Bill Love from the 1980s. He ran one of what was the biggest reptile wholesale import companies called Glades Herp in Florida. It's the same place that got blown down by a hurricane and released loads of Burmese into Florida. But it's been run by Bill Love, and Bill Love was the Madagascar godfather. He organised field trips that you could go on, like paid field trips that where he'd guide you through Madagascar. And I was like, wow, going to Madagascar with Jim Pether and Bill Love, it don't get any better than that. So, but it did, by the way. But let's move on. So Jim, who knew Bill Love well enough, I didn't because I'm just little old me, got in touch with Bill Love, and Bill Love said, yeah, I'm already over there at that point. I'm just about to finish one of my tours, so I'll extend my trip by a couple of weeks and we'll hang around with you guys. So now I'm going to Madagascar with Jim Pether and Bill Love, and my mind is blown, and it's awesome. So then at this point, Jim says to me, well, while we're in Madagascar, we could also go to Mauritius. And I was like, why? He says, well, there's this guy in Mauritius who runs this crocodile and aldabra breeding facility, a zoo called La Parc Venille. And he says, I want to do business with him. I was like, mate, I don't know if I can afford it. And more importantly, just send him an email. And he said, no. And at this point, he gave me one of the best bits of advice that I've ever been given. And it's borne true. He said, any dickhead can send an email. It takes somebody special to go, shake his hand, buy him a beer, break some bread, do some business. He says, if you ever want to do well in business, shake hands, break bread, drink beer. He says, we're going to Mauritius. I was like, okay, we're going to Mauritius. So now I'm going to Madagascar with Bill Love and Jim Pether, and then we go to Mauritius to see Nile crocodiles and aldabra tortoises being bred. So my mind is well and truly blown by this point, and I'm emailing with Bill Love like he's my best mate. Hi, Bill. Can't wait. Looking forward to it. like I'm some top of the north or something when I'm just little old me at that point with no credentials, remember. And then Bill Love says, "Hey guys, wouldn't it be really cool if we could go to Round Island?" And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. At this point, you really are in fantasy land. We've already got a really good trip. And while I would love to go to Round Island, we all know that it's been closed to non-scientific visitors since 1975. So the odds on us getting there is slim to none. So I'm not even going to get excited about it." And Jim says, "Well, you know, my guy over in Mauritius might be able to sort something, but yeah, it's unlikely." So hold that thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do is we fly out to, I can't even remember where we stopped over, but we stopped over somewhere and then flew to Tanna. And then within 5 minutes of us leaving the taxi, we found our first panther chameleon, and I basically wet my pants. These were animals that we couldn't even keep alive at this point, remember. In the early 2000s, I can't even remember whether Yemens were established in the trade, but certainly keeping panther chameleons alive didn't happen as far as I recall. My timing might be wrong, but I certainly weren't keeping them alive. I can tell you that much. So yeah, that was our initiation. From there, if we flick to number 2, we'll get a good view of the people.
Let's go. Which way are we going?
The one with the 3 of us right at the top there, with Jim with a hat on and me and Bill Love. That's it.
Yep.
So there's Jim on the right, the guy from Gran Canaria, and in the middle is Bill Love, who, as you can see, is rather a large gentleman. And this was me eating the first meat I'd eaten in 20 years. So I've been a vegetarian for 20 years for stupid, foolish reasons, which I won't go into now. But I knew that if I was going into the jungle with Jim and Bill, I was in no position to be the high maintenance kid go, "Oh no, I can't eat this. I'll have to go to find a vegetarian restaurant in the jungle." Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first meat I ate in 20 years was zebu steak. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Nice.
zebu is a big ugly cow with a hump and a dewlap. Yeah. And but beyond that, that was probably the only meat we could identify, because we turn up at places like this and I'd say, "What is this?" And the lady serving it to us would say, "Meat." And I'd say, "What kind of meat?" And she'd go. So I have no idea what I was eating. What I can tell you is at one point it disagreed with me and I had to stand in the sea for half a day.
Oh
Yeah.
dear.
Because no toilet was going to help me. And the guys would check to see if the coast was clear, so to speak, and they'd bring me out food while I was sat on a deck chair in the sea. And I was very popular with the fish, I can tell you that as well. But yeah, I stood in the sea for half a day because meat definitely did not agree with me, or whatever I was eating did not agree with me. And if you move on to the next shot, it probably explains why. That's the hammerheads on the
Yeah.
right. So there's every likelihood that this is what I was eating at some points. We just came across this guy with a load of hammerhead heads strung to his bike, and he was off to sell them. So it's no wonder I was a bit, upset.
Yeah. I'm not
Um,
surprised.
oh yeah, that's something I should mention, because at one of the on the plane up to Tanna, we flew into Tanna, which was the capital, around about the middle of the island. And then we caught another plane up to the very northern tip of the island. And one of the places we stopped at was Nosy Be, where you get those famous blue chameleons from.
Yeah.
And we got out, we asked the pilot if we could get out of the plane and look for chameleons. And he was like, "Yes, we'll be back in 10 minutes. So it was a little rickety old plane, and we could say hello to the pilot. We got out and we didn't find any chameleons on the runway. And Bill Love said to me, "Don't worry, son. Where we're going, we'll see some chameleons that piss all over the ones from Nosy Be." And we
Okay.
did. And if you can flick through the next few slides, this is one that we found. And then there's another one that we found. There's one with Jim, and there's another one with me. And basically, oh no, that's not him.
That one.
There's one with Jim there. Look. Oh yeah, there's one. Basically, we got after 2 days of getting out of the car to see chameleons, panther chameleons, we stopped. We got bored by panther chameleons. We started calling them tree rats, and it's embarrassing to me now to think that we saw so many chameleons. We just stopped. In about 100 meters, I could probably find you 50 chameleons.
Wow.
And it didn't matter where we went, they were just hanging out the trees. They were like tree rats. Um, it was it was fantastic for the first couple of days, and then after that, we stopped looking for chameleons. Um, here's a couple of interesting bits and bobs. So Madagascar was a relatively safe country when we got there, but a few years before we got there, a couple of famous reptile keepers had been shot, and one of them was killed, another one was seriously injured, and another one got away because he jumped into the nearest river and managed to get downstream out of the gunfire. And what had happened was they had Madagascar was a big place for poaching, mainly for the ploughshare tortoises that are really rare. And the Durrell Institute, Gerald Durrell Jersey Zoo Institute, has got a big
Yeah.
breeding facility over there that they're very protective of. They'd already lost a load of their tortoises to poachers. Excuse me. So when this group of herpers turned up there, walking around the jungle in the middle of the night, which is something Madagascan people do not do, yeah,
Yeah.
the local police were called, and the local guard, I think it was an English guy at the time, if I remember rightly, I could be wrong, was the guard at the tortoise facility, ended up face to face with these herpers who were just looking for reptiles, and one thing led to another, and some very inexperienced and probably quite frightened armed policemen shot and killed one of the herpers, and
Blimey.
that was a few years before we got there. But our time there was absolutely idyllic. And the reason we found so many animals is because we had a fixer. We had Bill Love, and we had another guy there who was our guide that Bill had arranged that would see reptiles 20 yards before I saw them. I stopped looking for animals because it wasn't worth me looking because our guide would see them before me. We were on a night hike through the jungle at one point on a mountain, and he said, "Look there, Brookesia." So I ran over with my head torch to this bush where he was looking. And I said, "Where?" And he said, there are three of them. And I said, "Where?" And he got my head and he pushed it towards the bush. And he said, "There." I said, "Where?" And he got his finger and he went, there, there, and there. I could not see them. But this guy had seen them from, yeah, 4 meters away. And that's what it was like the whole time. This guy was absolutely awesome. And he saw them long before we did. We found gecko lepis. That's one of the animals that I found. Gecko lepis are a bit like, do you know the fish snail gecko, the Torata skincus? Well, there's not a picture of it here, I'm afraid, but
That's right. Let's
um,
chuck another picture up just for people. But yeah.
yeah. So yeah, these are Madagascan plated lizards, are common in the trade. But gecko lepis, I just found one and grabbed it. And if you know anything about gecko lepis, their skin is like day gecko skin, but 10 times worse. It's like holding wet toilet tissue. And I didn't
Right.
know. I just grabbed this gecko and it just went out of my hand and left its gill behind. I was devastated. And Bill Love was like, "Yeah, gecko lepis, you only ever do it once."
Yeah.
And I caught a 10 wreck between my feet. It just ran at me in the night. So I made a V out of my feet and caught it in the V of my feet. Yeah, it was great. We tripped over loads of stuff. Um, and I think Bill Love put it best. He said, Madagascar's great if you're okay with the headaches. And one of the questions he asks on his website when he's signing people up to go on this expedition, he said, if you find a cockroach in your shower, are you happy or sad? And if you answer sad, he said, this is not the trip for you.
Right.
Yeah. Because he'd get people thinking they were going on this posh kind of safari.
Yeah.
And it's not. It really is kind of roughing it. Um, and I absolutely loved it. We went off to this desert, this uninhabited island off the north coast of Madagascar to look for this chameleon that was thought to be the tiniest chameleon on the planet at the time. It's now been superseded, but at the time, It was the smallest chameleon on the planet. And when we went there, of course, there are no facilities, nobody lives there, there's no restaurants, there's no shops. So you take all your food over with you. And of course, because there are no fridges as well, you have to take it over alive. So we took these 3 live chickens over with us, which is a former vegetarian, was a bit iffy for me. And we would go off looking for reptiles during the daytime, and we would come back, and the cook we took over with us had cooked the chickens, and the fishermen had been off fishing to bring us fish. So the first thing that happened was, have you seen Finding Nemo?
Yeah.
We were eating Nemo. We'd come back, and there's a ton of fish. There was like beautiful marine fish that were worth hundreds of pounds in the UK. We were like, oh, yeah, the other ones are nice. That was the first thing. But the second thing was, we spent, I think it was 3 days on this island. And on the first day, I was like, look, lads, I can eat the chicken, but can you take it off the bone for me? Because I can't do that medieval thing,
Yeah.
just take it off the bone, I can eat it. That was day one. After 3 days of climbing up and down this island, I was so hungry. I was like, okay, wipe its ass, cut its head off, put it on my plate. I'll eat anything. Yeah. And that was the end of my vegetarianism. But yeah, Madagascar was great. If we just flick through the rest of the pictures, I can,
Yeah, sure.
just for entertainment's sake, at least we
Yeah,
should
of course.
show these
Let's see
guys
which
some
ones.
animals.
Let's do this one. I know these. I used to keep one of these.
Yeah, and this is one of the delights. When Madagascar was trading freely, these things were common in the trade. All of the day geckos were common. These were common. The plated lizards were common. And it's one of the things that I still find delight in now. Animals that we see in the trade, in our hobby, seeing them in the wild always gives me a buzz. It
Yeah.
always makes me really pleased. It's fantastic. What else have we got?
Let's go. We've done those ones. We've got this one.
Oh yeah, Metallophobenae. It's basically a brown frog. Apparently common as well. But to Birmingham, Black Country, this was amazing to see one of these in the wild. It just jumped past our feet while we were on a night hike. It seems that all the time that you have to get reptiles in foreign countries, firstly it's at night, and secondly it's up a mountain somewhere. That
Yeah.
tends to be the case.
And we got this one.
Lucas just sent me a note saying that I should check that my sound is going through the headset because my sound is pretty bad. So I'm going to do that now.
The sound is going through the headset. I think the signal dropped out a little bit, but I think it'll be all right.
Let me double check.
Yeah, double check.
Yeah, still going through the headset.
Yeah.
So, okay. My apologies for the sound. I know that it can be an issue. But yeah, one of the things we did, this was in the early days of mobile phones, and we'd climb to the top of this mountain at night. And if you've ever been to the Southern Hemisphere, you'll know that it's got this beautiful salt and pepper sky when you've got this really clear sky, and it's just like splattered with stars. And so there's me and Jim Pether and Bill Love. He's a big guy, so getting him to the top of the mountain was difficult. And we got to the top of this mountain, turned our head torches off, and lay on this rock, looking up at the sky, having a bit of a moment.
Yeah.
And then, for some reason, Jim's phone went off. It was the only place we'd had signal, just ruined the moment for us. But there you go. This is. What is this? This is Phelsuma dubia. It's a baby one, pretty common in the north of Madagascar.
I think what we've got left, we've got this chameleon.
Blue-nosed chameleon. This is either Paluma bogatai or Paluma linotum, and I don't know which one it is because I'm not that clever. But it was absolutely beautiful.
Yes, it is a stunning animal with a bizarre-looking face. Well, as a lot of chameleons do have. Fantastic. And then we have got done that one.
Snake.
Oh, yeah.
That one. Right, this one's interesting. So this snake was about 5-6 feet long. I don't know what it is, but doesn't its head remind you of a retic?
Yeah, it does a bit.
And
yeah, I can definitely see it.
Thinking, if these could be kids, then it would be a fabulous snake for the hobby. Like a mini reticulated python. Just beautiful.
Very cool. And then we got one of these as well.
Oh yeah. Frontophis madagascarensis, absolutely beautiful. Just found it in the middle of a field. Guess who found it? Not me.
Paul says scrub, isn't it? That's referring to the other snake. I don't know.
No, it's not for a python. Oh,
Bizarre looking, but it's very cool.
yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Fantastic. So,
Bill Love did tell me what it was, but I forgot. I never recorded it. But shall I tell you what we didn't see?
yeah.
We didn't see the one thing that I really, really desperately wanted to see. The one thing that I was told would be dead easy to see because they're dead common is Sanzinia. Didn't see any Sanzinia.
Okay. Paul's on Madagascar. Yeah,
On Madagascar. Yeah. Northern tip of the island.
Right, and then after Madagascar, obviously you were heading to Mauritius, and we have got Mauritius photos as well, I believe.
Yeah.
That's not that one. There we go.
So we spent 4 days in Mauritius, basically at this tortoise and crop breeder. And if you look in this picture, I think there are about 20 Aldabra tortoises, which was the most Aldabra tortoises I've ever seen in my life. And this was just one corner of the place. He must have had hundreds of adult Aldabra tortoises. If you want to flick over to the next couple of pictures.
Yep.
That's Jim with a massive Aldabra.
Yeah, that is huge.
And yeah, and then me. Look at the size of that neck, just unbelievable. Me
look
with
at the haircut. We've gone from down past your chest to the complete opposite.
Well, I prepared really heavily for this trip. I wanted no problems, so I was like, I'm not taking any hair products. I'll just buzz cut it, and then it's like low maintenance hairdo. So that was that low maintenance hairdo. But so it was amazing. This guy had a zoo with loads of cool animals in it, and we saw loads of Aldabras. The number of Aldabras that he was breeding, if you imagine a typical double garage, each one of those, he had dozens of those, and each one had a different graded size of Aldabra tortoise in it. So Jim basically went through and cherry picked all the Aldabras that he wanted shipping over to Gran Canaria. And Jim still works with this guy today. If you read our magazine, you can see our article about plowshare tortoises from Madagascar that this guy's involved in. And yeah, Jim sells his Aldabra tortoises around the world. But Mauritius, you probably realize, is the former home of the dodo. So the conservation and ecology eyes of the world are on Mauritius. And this guy that we were visiting, a guy called, oh no, he's gone again. I can't remember his name, was basically the head of any kind of conservation project in Mauritius. So he was involved with all kinds of stuff, but Aldabra breeding was how he funded all of his projects. Which brings me to a very good point, is that conservation cannot exist in a capitalist society without funding. So you have to find a way to fund these endeavors. And the way you fund it is that no animal has a value unless you put a price on its head. So to put a price on its head for the pet trade made thousands upon thousands and probably millions of dollars for his conservation efforts across Madagascar, Mauritius, and Round Island, and Reunion Island, and all the other islands that he's active on. It was fabulous. But one of the things that we really, really wanted to see at his zoo was a telfair skink. And to the untrained eye, telfair skinks look like LBJs, but the fact that they only come from Round Island made us all desperate to see them. Yeah, and he only had one, and we were basically beating each other up to get a photograph of this telfair skink. They're about this big, and just look like grey, brown, silver skinks. But they only occur on this tiny, tiny piece of real estate that is Round Island. And remember that, because we're about to head to Round Island now.
Yeah. Let's head to Round Island, which is this one. Right, let's go. Any particular picture you want to start with? Let's go here. We'll start with a helicopter.
Sorry. Yes, sorry, I've got my mic on mute.
That's right.
Yes, that's the best one to start with because we asked the guy. Oh, and I need to know his name. I can't remember. We asked the guy
On
who
your
ran the
notes,
zoo.
you've got a name, Owen Griffith. Is that it?
Owen Griffiths. That's him. Owen Griffiths. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
So Owen Griffiths was involved with the government and all the conservation projects on Round Island and on Madagascar and on Mauritius. And we said, hey, seeing as we're here, what's the odds on us going to Round Island? And he said, slim to none for various reasons. He says, as you know, the island has been closed to non-scientific visitors since 1976. And indeed, the American ambassador to Mauritius asked to go to Round Island a few months ago and was refused. Yeah.
Right.
And we were like, okay. But we can say, can't we? He says, well, no, not really, because you're only here for 3 days, and 2 of those days are public holidays. So there's nobody in at the council. Yeah. And I was like, shit. He's like, let me make a phone call. And we'd already been there for half a day. He says, let me make a phone call. So he made a phone call and he said, right, grab your bags and run, because the police helicopter that only visits Round Island every 2 weeks to drop off supplies is currently waiting to take off. He says, and if you get there before it takes off, they're going to take you. So we just grabbed our bags and ran
Yeah.
to this helicopter, and they picked us up and they took us to Round Island. And when we landed, 2 things happened. Firstly, all of the scientists came over to the helicopter to pick up their gear and saw us inside and went, who the hell are you? And we were like, we're just here for a look around. Yeah. And so that was it. But the second thing that was really worrying was as we were landing, we'd noticed these little things scurrying around on the ground when we'd been told that rats had been eradicated from the island. The whole Jersey Zoo Gerald Durrell project was about eradicating invasive species, which was rats, rabbits, and goats. And we'd been told that all of the rats had been eradicated from this island, and yet there we were watching all scurrying around, little long tails running around everywhere, and we were like, "What the hell is going on?" And it weren't until we got closer, and I think there's a photograph of this just inside the research establishment where they're all running around on the floor.
This one?
So the one with yes, one. What we realized is the place was crawling in welfare skinks. These are the skinks that we'd been desperate to see at the zoo and who'd been fighting each other to get a photograph of. And the place was absolutely crawling with them. We had to be careful where we put our feet down. And even the researchers are like, yeah, they start to piss you off after a while. They're really, really annoying. It got to the point where, can we go to the one that was in the bag?
This one.
That one. Yeah. We caught one of the skinks in our bag nicking biscuits. Yeah. And while we were looking for this really rare boa, the skinks, we found a boa, by the way, as a cliffhanger, but these skinks were just getting in soft and running over to us, and we were like, flipping them out the way. They were everywhere. It was unbelievable. Again, I think they'd be really good lizards to get in the hobby, but they don't have any trouble breeding on Round Island. So Round Island is famous for 2 different boas. One of them hasn't been seen since 1975. The other one is this one, which is the rough scalp boa. And none of the researchers that we spoke to when we were there had ever seen one. Yeah. And we were unsure as to whether we'd be able to find them. What's unusual about these boas is they lay eggs, which is quite unusual for boas, as you probably realize.
Yeah.
So Jim and I decided we were going to scour this goddamn island looking for this boa. And Bill Love was, having had a few days of climbing up and down mountains, was absolutely knackered. We basically beasted him. And he was like, look, I'm just going to stay around here and take some photographs. So we went off around the island with one of the researchers, And we found not one, not two, but three of these boas within a couple of hours. And you can probably flick a few of the pictures. This one's a juvenile. They lose their patterning and become entirely grey brown over time.
This
The one
one?
in his hands is a baby. They're like terracotta when they're babies. This is us teaching the researcher how to pop a baby snake so that they can
Oh,
test what
okay.
sex it is. And there's
Um,
another one, I think, another photograph of them. Oh yeah, that's just the gratuitous photograph of me with one proving that I'd found one. But the thing about these snakes is they only occur on the island, and we were one of the last people to ever blag ourselves onto the island. And since then, nobody has been able to go. I know
right.
Emmanuel Van Hagen from Exoterra has toured all of the islands around here, and I know that he really, really wants to get onto Round Island, but hasn't been able to get there. And if
Wow.
Emmanuel Van Hagen can't get there with his contacts, it tells you how exclusive it is.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it was absolutely fantastic. And guess who found the first rough-scaled boa on that island?
That was you, was it? That was your claim to
It was
fame.
me. It is my claim to fame. It's one of the first snakes I ever found in the wild.
That's really
Okay,
cool.
I'd found a few UK snakes, but everything else, I'd either been there when somebody else found it, or couldn't find a goddamn thing. So
Yeah,
one of the first snakes I ever found in the wild was one of those, which, yeah, it's
that's
quite
fantastic. And then
pleasing.
there is one more picture in this bunch that I want to ask about because
Yeah, there's two more pictures, but this is
yeah, this says
that.
shark repellent, does it not?
It was a bit unnerving that the military police who flew us over there were wearing these on their hip. So we were worried about what would compel somebody to need one of those. How many helicopters go down that it's a standard bit of kit that you keep on you at all times. It was a bit nervy, but no, we didn't need it. But the other one, before you put it up, can I
Yep,
ask you and your listeners,
of course you
what's the largest species of day gecko?
can. Oh, I have no idea. The Madagascar giant day gecko, I guess.
A lot of people think this is true, and I even read an article in Exotic Keeper magazine, really, where it was quoted that that was true, but
Yeah.
it's not, and I've got a picture to prove it.
Paul said nope as well. Before we put the picture up, does he know what it is? Let's test the knowledge quickly. Whilst we're waiting for Paul to comment on that, let's just do this again as we haven't done it for a while. If you want to donate to Responsible Reptile Keeping, there is a link in the PayPal. No, there's not. There's a link to PayPal in the show notes below. Go and pop some pennies over there. All 100% of the donations go direct to Responsible Reptile Keeping, and it helps them keep up fighting the good fight. Right, we have got a comment. Paul, I can't see it yet. It's not loading. He says, of course he does, but he's working. That's fair enough. We'll let you off. So let's get the picture up, and Tony, you can tell us what it is. It is this one, isn't it? That is a chunky lizard.
It doesn't do it justice, but it's about this big. Yeah, easily this big. Yeah, easily a foot and a bit.
Blimey.
Felsium gunteri lives
I
on.
can't
I
say I've
think it
ever
lives
heard of
on.
it.
Pretty sure. Yeah, pretty sure it lives on Round Island. It's pretty drab, pretty grey, but it is massive and a real chunky one.
Nice. Fantastic stuff. And I think that is all the pictures from Round Island. I think we've done all those now.
Yeah, this was
Yeah, I think
this
we have.
was
There's
the
one more of
greatest.
the skink we haven't seen.
Oh yeah, there he is. Telfair skink.
Fantastic stuff. We'll leave that up for a minute whilst we go on to the next one for a second. What we got
Well,
next?
I
Go on.
should really say that this trip was the greatest field trip I or anybody else had been on. Yeah. I spoke about it at several herpetological societies. But yeah, he's been Googling, look. He's been Googling. So I presented about this trip to several herpetological societies in front of some people who had been some places and done some things, and every time I presented it, they all said, "Wow, that sounds amazing! Fantastic presentation! Really loved it. We wish we could have had that experience." And I was just some poor, low down sidekick who really did not have the credentials to go on that trip,
Yeah.
and to have that to recount just feels like a real privilege. I even wrote about the Round Island trip for BBC Wildlife magazine, so that was pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, yeah, it sounds like a trip of a lifetime. My friends and I were recently talking about Madagascar, and whilst it's not something I can afford to do this year, it's not something that is unattainable. Maybe even
Yeah.
next year. Like we looked, and you could probably do it for £1,000, which isn't that bad at all, really.
And you should. But again, I can't stress strongly enough that you need to get a fixer in town.
Yeah,
And to be able to find that fixer will be very difficult because, as per my experience in the Gambia, everybody says, "Oh, yeah, I can show you where the lizards are, I can show you where the snakes are," and they can't. Yeah.
yeah,
You need somebody with a track record of professionally doing it, which is what I'd probably recommend getting in touch with one of the organisations that are at the UK. I spoke to one that was at the IHS show, where they organise trips to all kinds of cool places like Costa Rica, Madagascar, blah blah blah. And these people have been there, done that, know how to do it. They've got the system set up in the country. If you go there on your own, you might be lucky. Yeah,
yeah,
damn right. Do you know what? I've not been to Asia and I've not been to Australia, and those are two places I need to go to for
yeah.
sure.
Australia is high up on my list.
But you've got to have a fixer in the country, else you're going to be very disappointed, unless you're very lucky or very talented, of which I am neither. Get yourself a fixer in country. You should. Why risk it? You're paying all this money to go over there. An extra few quid to get a fixer will guarantee you what you need. So get it
Yeah,
done.
yeah. No, makes sense. Makes sense. Right. Next one we have got 2008, and we are going to Tunisia. Have we got pictures for Tunisia?
No, again, I,
Okay.
I lost most of these pictures, and to be frank, we didn't see anything again. Um, I went there with a buddy of mine. We just fancied a bit of an adventure, and it was winter time. The only reptiles we saw were in a zoo, which was awesome, but they were all native stuff. The weirdest thing about the zoo was that they had the remains of different animal parts on a wall. So there were like dead snakes and camel legs and antelope heads, and all on this one wall. It was like this massive wall of death, which was a bit
Yeah, that's a bit
unpleasant
odd. Was
in
it
a,
like
at the zoo. But
a proper exhibit, or was it like they've
yeah,
just stuck them to the wall?
no, they set it up as a display.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of it was in a state of decomposition. Um, but
Right.
yeah, we didn't really see much. But there were two interesting events that happened from that trip. So the first one was we decided for a bit of a jollies to go on a trip on a quad bike through the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
Um, so we booked this quad bike, and we had a guide who was part of the quad bike company. So we rode off into the desert, and the first thing we wanted to do, because we're both quite big Star Wars fans, is go to Tatooine,
Yeah.
because the set of Star Wars Tatooine is still sat there in the desert, and you can go along. And it was fabulous, and because we went there at the wrong time of the year, in what was essentially the winter time, still very warm. It's still t-shirt and vest weather. But we went to Tatooine. There was hardly anybody there, and we'd been warned that we would be inundated with people trying to sell us stuff.
Right.
So when we got there, we got off the quad bikes. This one little kid came over, and his name was Osama. So
Right.
we were like, "Oh, okay, this was just after, was it just after 9/11? Yeah, long
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
9/11. So his name was Osama, and he was just trying to sell us these trinkets, these little necklaces. And so my mate Ben as well, my mate Ben said, "If I buy one off you, will you piss off and leave us alone?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I bought a couple off him, and it was left us alone. So we basically walked around Tatooine, unaccosted, had a great time. So that was great. Um, on
Yeah,
the
that's cool.
way.
I'm a massive Star Wars fan. I'm well jealous of that.
It was exactly like you'd hope it to be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really, really cool. We really enjoyed it. And so anyway, spent 3 or 4 hours there just hanging out. And then we got on the quad bikes to come home. So we're going home. And it's getting like, a bit late now. And we're driving along. And we're driving along and we're driving along. It's getting colder. And we're driving along. And Ben's like, shit, it's cold. I was like, yeah, it gets cold in the desert, mate. Good job we're nearly home. We're driving along. It's getting colder and colder. And I'm thinking, shit, this ain't good. We should not be out, and it's dark by this point. Yeah, we're driving
yeah,
along, and I was like, have we been kidnapped? Have we been hoodwinked? Yeah, because this definitely is not safe. And we're trying to speak to the guy and ask him how far, and the answer is always not very far. Yeah, but
yeah,
as it gets colder and colder, he's obviously in trouble. He's obviously getting cold, and I'm like, this has gone wrong. We're in trouble, and we might die because it gets cold in the desert. And we were going on for ages. Now, I honestly think we were lost. Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean, one sand dune looks like the next. Yeah, and I was like, I can't die like this. I can't die like this. Everybody knows that that I go on adventures to crazy places, and I'm not, I'm pretty savvy. Tony cannot die in the cold in the desert. It will be,
yeah,
I, I I know it gets cold in the desert. And we went on and on and on. We were absolutely freezing. Ben was really frightened, and I was trying to hold a face, going, "Yeah, we'll be okay. Don't worry."
yeah,
And eventually, we got back, but it was not good. I honestly thought I was going to die. It was not a good time. But one of the things we did on that trip with the quad bikes was we came across a cattle herder enclosure. It got this big wooden enclosure, and on the front of the enclosure was a camel skull. Yeah.
right.
So I was like, I want that. I want that. How much is it? And it cost me kind of 87 pence in Tunisian money. So I bought it, strapped it to the back of the quad bike, took it home, put it in the hotel, I put it in my case. What I didn't realise is when we opened the case, it had been full of wasps. So one of these wasps just came out of my case, which was a bad thing. Fast forward, I got it home. That was probably as exciting as Tunisia got, because again, we didn't have a fixer.
Yeah,
Got home, and at the time, I was living in this really old, freezing cold cottage in Tamworth in the Midlands. And the bit of the cottage that I had as an office was where I hung this camel skull, just hung it up in the office to be cool. And as it got colder, I abandoned the office where it was freezing cold and went to, work in the front room where we had heating. So this camel skull was hung in the office for like the whole of winter. Anyway, fast forward a few months, and it's something like March. And my girlfriend, who I lived with at the time, said, "There's a lizard on the wall in the office." And I was like, "No, there's not a lizard on the wall in the office, because I don't keep arboreal lizards. I keep leopard geckos and helmeted geckos, and I don't keep arboreal lizards. So there's not a lizard on the wall in the office." Yeah. I went in the office, and there was this lizard on the wall, and it was a tarantula. So my mind's like, "What?" And I'm thinking, I haven't kept tarantula for 10 years. I don't know anybody who keeps tarantula. I haven't even seen a tarantula for 10 years. Where is there a tarantula there? Where would it have come from? And so my mind's like, and this is like a good 6, 8 months after we'd been to Tunisia,
yeah,
and it wasn't next to the skull. So I was like, no way has that lizard come from Tunisia in a skull. No way is it petrified all the way across here in the hold of the aeroplane and survived the hold in the cold. No way has it survived a Tamworth winter in the freezing cold, and absolutely nowhere has it turned up in a reptile specialist's office. Yeah. So eventually, I took it to work, and I couldn't bring myself to put it in a viv, and I just had to let it roam free in the reptile house. We called it Geronimo, and
yeah.
for about about 2 years, we saw it running around, and after about 2 years, I just hadn't seen it for a while, and it made me really sad that Geronimo had obviously died.
Yeah,
This was like the hardcore lizard, and this is something I like about animal keeping, is that who cares about little house geckos? Nobody cares, right?
yeah,
That one little house gecko meant the world to me, yeah, and, yeah, it was little Geronimo, I do miss him.
fantastic. So that's really cool. I'm amazed that
Yeah.
it, like you say, it managed to get all the way back in that freezing cold hold of the aeroplane and then survive the British winter.
Yeah, exactly. It's craziness. That was against all odds, and he deserved to have a life of luxury in that reptile house.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Dan says rip. Yep.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
man.
little Geronimo. Oh dear. Right.
Yeah, it was a
Next
cool
one.
animal.
The next one we've got some more pictures again. So let me push some buttons and get them back on screen.
Ah, North Carolina.
Yeah, that is where we are heading next. So
So my
um,
sister lives in North Carolina, and when she was getting married, it was the first time I'd ever been over there to visit her. And this was and again, this wasn't a trip when I was going to find reptiles. I was going out for my sister's wedding. But me being me, couldn't resist it. I went on what was at the time one of the big, I don't know if it was RF UK or Captive Bred.
yeah.
And I was like, hey guys, is there anyone here from North Carolina who would take me herping if I go there? And this kid came on called Brandon Fulton. And he was only like 15. He was like, yeah, I can show you loads of stuff. And I was like, really? Like some 15-year-old kid? But, you know, I waited for other people to offer and nobody else offered. So we took him up on it. And we spent 2 days with him and we saw, I think it was 18 different species in 2 days. It was
Nice.
absolutely fantastic. He was one of those guys that could take you over to a log and go, yeah, there you go. There's one of those. There's one of those. If you turn
Yeah,
that
yeah.
log over, you'll find one of those. And there's nothing special about the species. We saw like this rough green snake. We saw several of them. But to see a rough green snake in the wild, when you've seen loads of them in vivariums, to see one in the wild was just really, really thrilling.
Yeah, I can imagine. That, yeah, I really like rock green snakes. To be fair, I watch a lot of
Yeah,
is it NFK Herping, and he's based in like Florida, Georgia way, and he finds a lot
yeah.
of pet species. But yeah, I absolutely love it, and he always finds a little green noodles, and they're fantastic. Um, I'll ping through the pictures. If you give us an explanation, then
Yeah.
we'll keep going.
These are just proper items, if we find little brown jobbies. You turn over a piece of corrugated iron, and there they are. A black racer bit the shit out of me, and it was fantastic. We waded waist. Oh yeah, we desperately wanted to see a cottonmouth. And there's an article. It's free to read on our website in our latest magazine about this trip to North Carolina, when we'd spent 2 days looking for a cottonmouth and found one at the 11th hour in a place called Cottonmouth Creek. So I don't know why we didn't go there first, if I'm entirely
Yeah,
honest.
it sounds like that's probably where you should have gone to start with.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this guy Brandon was fantastic. He really helped. I'm still in touch with him very occasionally. He joined the army. Corn snakes in the wild, not friendly.
Yeah, that's not a friendly looking snake at all.
No, not friendly. Found loads of turtles by wading into these stinky creeks. The oh yeah, I think it's a chain king. Actually, I think not from I think it is. Um, it's Our hire car was battered and stunk like shit when we took it back, because we just hired this little cheap car, battered it through the forest and all the forest tracks, and sat in it with stinky bloody jeans that we'd been in the creeks in. I don't know what they thought of it, but we had full insurance, so we could have trashed it if we liked, but we didn't. The
Yeah,
rarest thing we found was this rainbow snake.
yeah, that's
They're pretty
gorgeous.
rare, apparently.
Absolutely stunning.
So yeah, again, it just proves my point. If you've got a good fixer, if you've got a guy who knows the terrain, this is this is how you get to see animals. If you just go there winging it, and I've done it, I've visited my sister several times, gone into places that you would say is perfect habitat and found next to nothing.
Yeah,
Um, If you really want to see stuff, get a fixer.
Fantastic stuff. We've got two visits on your list that you sent me that have no details. So I don't know if you want to go through Hungary and Crete quickly, or do you want to skip past those
Um,
ones?
Probably not Hungary, to be honest, because again, it was non-herping trips. I went to Hungary on a barn owl conservation project and nearly died there climbing inside church bell towers where we were um, fixing up nesting boxes for barn owls. We did find some reptiles there, but it was LBJs and grass snakes and
Yeah,
what are they legless lizard in the UK.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that was it. But that was a fun trip. And again, Crete, it was a holiday. We hardly saw anything. I tried to find stuff, but really it was just LBJs and a couple of turtles that we saw. But again,
yeah,
if you don't have a fixer, you don't get to see much.
that's fair enough. That's a lesson that I have definitely learned from this episode. And
Oh man.
whilst I don't think we're going to get one from Morocco this time, if we go and we see nothing, I know what we've done wrong for next time.
Well, I wish you every luck. And to be honest, you're going to have a great time. And
Yeah, I can't
whatever you
wait.
see will be fantastic experience.
Yeah,
If you're selfish and um, want to see everything and want to see it all and want to see loads of stuff, that's when you need a fixer. You'll definitely see some stuff,
yeah. Well, I said
but
to Paul,
with
I don't care what we find. I'm quite as long as we find something, even if it's like a little house gecko or a frog or something. I don't care. I just want to
and
find
you will,
something. So
and,
yeah, it
and
should
you
be good.
will. I think I've been spoiled on the trips that I've been on where I got babysat because those times I just tagged along like a sidekick, and found shitloads of stuff because they knew what they were doing, and they'd arranged to have the right people there. But that's the
Yeah,
best advice I can give you.
fantastic. Right, and then the last trip that we're gonna finish off on today, November 2023. So pretty recent, really. Um,
Not last November,
Equatorial.
November before.
Yeah, so Equatorial Guinea. Let's chuck a picture. Is there any particular picture you want to start with? I'm just going to trigger
Let's
warn
start with
some
that one
people.
top
There is a
left.
nasty foot picture in here.
We'll start top left with that. So there's good old Jim again, right? And me and Jim have been on a few trips. We always have a good time. He's a really good guy, but we haven't been anywhere for a while, mainly because we're both pretty old, both pretty busy with stuff. So I was like, let's go on a trip. Let's go somewhere really cool. Let's go somewhere nobody ever goes. Let's go somewhere where everybody will be jealous. Let's go somewhere really special. So he's like, okay, let's go to Equatorial Guinea. I was like, where?
Yeah,
West Africa. It's been close to tourists for years. They've got a dictator in place who, in the 1970s, superseded another dictator that just systematically killed people. He
right.
gathered
Okay.
together all his opponents, put them in a football stadium, called all of the civilians into the football stadium, and then duly slaughtered most of them. The rest of them he made dig their own graves, left their heads out, and then everybody had to sit there while the fire ants ate them. Yeah,
That's
that was the
mad.
old dictator, right? Well, he was kicked out by the dictator who's in now, who's been sort of a benign dictator. He's not been too bad. Hasn't really done anything awful. You remember, if you're as old as I am, that Margaret Thatcher's son was involved in some kind of military coup to overturn a dictator, and it was in Equatorial Guinea. So that's pretty much all I can tell you about it. Beyond that, I know nothing about the place, except that they recently opened it to tourism, and we were one of the first sort of couple of hundred people that had ever been there. So we didn't really know what to expect, and there was no system set up to kind of look after tourists. We did our best to kind of get set up, but they had no idea. The first people we spoke to wanted to take us to museums and art galleries, and we were like, "No, that's not what we want to do." So eventually, we got the word through that we wanted to go looking for animals. So this was one of the first destinations that they set us up for. They got us to walk 3.5 hours to see a lake. We saw a lake. It was an awful trip, very hot. It rained on us all the time. We didn't see any animals, largely because very few animals live there because they eat them all. And
Right.
also because the people that we'd hired to guide us and carry our kit, etc., made so much bloody noise that any animals they were left
Yeah.
before we got there. And even though we asked them to be quiet, that didn't help. Yeah. So the terrain in these places was absolutely treacherous. And to give you a
Yeah.
good example,
Unfortunately, I couldn't get
um,
the videos to work that you sent me. I think we've got a picture of some dirt.
well, this is one of our camps. So we walked 5.5 hours to arrive at this place. Yeah. And it was only 3 kilometers off the place where we parked the car. It took us 5.5 hours to walk 3 kilometers because the terrain was so horrendous and slippy, as you can see. It's on the equator, it rains all the time. We'd quite often fall over. Um, if you fall over in Equatorial Guinea, don't grab a tree branch because it's probably covered in thorns and it will probably tear your hand open. Don't ask me how I know this, but it will. The other thing is, if you fall over on the trek that we were on, sometimes we were on the edge of a cliff, sometimes we were on the edge of a waterfall, sometimes we were on the edge of a river, and we nearly died. Once I fell over and looked down, and by the side of me were these two prongs of bamboo sticking up.
Oh,
Yeah.
blimey.
um, that I just missed that would have impaled me if I'd have hit them. It was so treacherous that we were really quite worried about one of us falling over because we're all quite old. Me and Jim are old anyway. Ma, the other guy in the picture, is from Denmark. He's pretty young. But if we fell over, there's no mountain rescue to come and get you. Yeah. And there's no way I can carry you out because I can't hardly stand on my own 2 feet. Um, so the only way we'd get you out would be to put down a tarp and pull you out, and we reckon that would take 2 days if you didn't die beforehand.
Blimey.
Um, my entire jungle experience in all the time I was there extended to about 2 meters, meter and a half to the ground, because I couldn't wear my glasses because you're on the equator, they just steam up and get covered in sweat. And I couldn't
Yeah.
wear my contact lenses because I didn't want to put my shitty fingers in my hands. So my entire jungle experience was spent looking at the floor, trying not to fall over. Now, when we got to the destination, having seen no animals in 5.5 hours, absolutely knackered, and I was certainly too old and too fat and too unfit to be on that journey, let me tell you. Despite my thoughts that I should be okay, I wasn't. We got there. The people we'd hired to carry our gear for us didn't know how to put up a tent, so we put up our own tents. Upon which point we realised there was no ground sheet, no sleeping bag, no roll mats, no pillows, no nothing. It was just us lying down on the floor in the mud.
Oh, dear.
And then, worse than that, worse than that, when we got there, they'd eaten all our food and drunk all our water. So all we had to eat was like the packet of crisps that we brought with us and the couple of mangoes we found in the jungle and the water from this brook that was carrying God knows what. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't catch botulism or get one of those bugs that eat your brain. It was it was madness. Yeah. Um that was that was kind of the earliest part of the trip. We were entirely pissed off, right? We hardly saw any animals. Yeah. We'd had to consult with a witch doctor before they'd allow us to go into this jungle. This witch doctor basically got a load of water, took a sip and passed it round, and then you spat it out. By the time it got to me, and I was like the 13th person, there were so many people sputum in it. I had to sort of bite off at the end. It was
Oof.
that was the witch doctor. And throughout the trip, the only animals we saw were the ones really. I saw a tall frog. I saw a spider. I saw a couple of LBJs. I saw a handful of red-headed agamas. Saw a couple of geckos, and that was it. The whole trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. The Oh yeah, this was a tall toad. It's called a warty toad. Something. Let me find its scientific name. That's probably one of the highlights of it. Actually,
Yeah.
that tall frog was one of the tall toad was one of the highlights. Um, Stylophorus tuberosa. That's what that is. Pretty cool.
Yeah, cool looking frog.
Beyond,
So,
we also managed to dislodge a load of bats from a cave as we walked past it, and these bats basically swarmed around in the air around us. We're on the edge of a cliff for about half an hour, and I've got these really cool slow motion video of the bats circling around us. It was
that's
absolutely
cool.
fabulous. We sat there for a while and looked at that. In that camp where you showed us, a tarantula ran up my leg.
Nice.
Didn't get a video. Yeah, that was quite unpleasant. But we'd got one of the government's head of wildlife crime with us, forestry commission with us, and it was a lady, and I'd been with her for 2 days. Well, she didn't speak English, by the way.
Right,
She,
okay.
in Equatorial Guinea, they only speak their native language is Spanish, apart from the tribal languages. So Jim could speak to her, but I couldn't. And it was 2 days before I realised she was wearing this hat. It was like a bucket hat, and on the front of a bucket hat, in a really ornate font, this woman from the government, it said "fuck off" on her hat. And she had no idea what it said. It was just a cool English hat, as far as she was
Yeah.
concerned, which she'd worn in our honour. So yeah, that was quite funny. But should we go through a few of the pictures?
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with the
Let's
feet.
start with Yeah, this is Jim Puffer's feet. It's got nothing to do with Equatorial Guinea. This is just how his feet look from 40 years living on a volcanic island and only wearing flip-flops. That's
Yeah.
his feet. That's what I had to stay with every night. So
Right.
that
Then
was
we got
disgusting.
this.
Yeah, most of the animals we saw were dead. This was one of the things we saw at a market, which this is basically traditional medicine. You can see at the top and at the bottom, sort of 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
python sea bay heads.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of this everywhere we went.
Yeah, I got python here.
Saw some.
So what's this? Like I don't know what that is.
Just some deer.
Yeah.
The python at the bottom there.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I can't tell you, but this is all for traditional medicine. I'm a man of the world. I've been to some places. I've seen some things. I thought I was a reasonably stoic and tough enough to take what I saw. But I saw some horrific stuff, and I've only sent you pictures of the stuff. I think it's okay,
Yeah.
although still not pleasant.
To be fair,
So that
I think
one,
the foot picture is pretty bad. Yeah,
this
this
was a
one.
Connexus tortoise that we found that had just been poached in the jungle. This guy was carrying it along in the jungle, so we bought it off him. It's still alive, by the way.
Good.
We bought it off him and released it a couple of miles down the track. He probably just caught it the next week, but for a case of a couple of euros, we bought it off him. What else
we
we got?
Some dinner by the looks of it.
Yeah, this is porcupine, pangolin at the back, the most trafficked animal on the planet.
Yeah.
But we saw mandrills. The blue-faced mandrill monkey.
Yeah.
We saw baboon vipers beheaded and hanging up. This was porcupine. This was dinner one night. Porcupine. Can you see it's still got the claws on it?
I can. Yeah. Was it nice?
No, it tasted like piss.
Okay. Fair enough.
I tried to eat
yeah.
it. Can you see that little,
Yeah.
that little kind of thing at the top? That's just a layer of fat that it was.
This bit here.
It was bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look.
It was so bad. I can't tell you. We'll come back to him. Actually, we'll come back to him.
Yeah, we'll come back to him. Let's go. Let's find something to look out for it. Let's go back to the frog for now. Toad for now.
Yeah, that's it. And the worst thing I saw, and this was awful. We went into a meat market, and there was row after row after row of stone slabs, just with monkeys all along. And what they apparently do is they catch a monkey, kill it, and then they blowtorch all the hair off and take it to the market, and it can be there for weeks, as far as I could see, because these things were bloated, maggot-ridden, stinking.
Yeah.
But I said to one of our guys, I was like, look, I've seen loads of chickens, I've seen loads of cattle. Why do you eat pangolins and why do you eat monkeys when all of this stuff's available? And he said, well, it's free and it's tasty. And
Wow.
the poverty in this place was such that they're utilizing natural resources, but
Yeah.
this wasn't the worst of what happened to us. So I'll give you a rendition of a. You probably coming to realize that this was the worst field trip I've ever been on in my whole life. It wasn't just bad; it was mostly awful. Sometimes I thought I would die,
Yeah.
and the pleasurable part of it, I could have probably fitted into 1 hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all the time I was there, I was, texting my wife when I had signal saying, look, this is bad, this has happened, that's happened. Um, Equatorial Guinea, the capital of Equatorial Guinea is on an island off the mainland. So we flew onto this island, and while we were there, we got a minibus to sit in, which was great. There was like 3 guides, a driver, 3 of us in it, loads of space. When we flew onto the mainland, they're actually building a whole new capital city on the mainland by just cutting down some jungle, building a capital city. So we drove there. The car we had on the mainland was just a pickup truck. So you've got 3 of us in the back just rammed in.
Yeah.
2 of our guides fitted in the passenger seat, and then there was a driver. So we were all rammed in. Our stuff was in the back. There was no cover, so a lot of our stuff was just getting piss wet through, which was great. Um, I was wet all the time I was there. For the first few days, I got wet and I tried to dry clothes out, but failed. So what I ended up with was a pack full of piss wet through clothes and slightly damp clothes that never got to dry, a set of wet clothes that I lived in, got up in the morning, put wet clothes on because it weren't worth it. And I kept one set of clothes dry for when we landed in civilization.
Yeah.
When we were going to this new capital city, we actually arrived, we crawled out the jungle and got driven to for 1 night of luxury in a 5-star hotel. We crawled out the jungle looking like shit and ended up in this 5-star hotel, which was just surreal. It's
Yeah.
the most beautiful place I've ever washed my underpants. It's it was mental. But that's what we lived in. At one point, we came out of the jungle, and the guide said to us, "Well, we have some luxury for you. We have proper beds and proper building." We got there; these beds were crawling. They were so stained and disgusting. It was awful. I didn't know if I wanted to sleep on them or sleep on the floor. It was
Yeah.
so bad. And I used to be able to sleep anywhere. It wasn't a problem. I'd sleep wherever. Now I think I'm Princess and the Pea. Now I'm like, oh, I need my own pillow. I can't sleep here. I'm so weak. So that was what that was like. But there were 2 really bad experiences. The first one was when we went on a boat, a little dugout canoe into the jungle. So we went on this dugout canoe, got into the jungle, pulled out to the side, got out, sort of looking around for reptiles, didn't find anything, of course. But we heard this noise coming through the jungle, and I was like, whoa. And it was voices. So then this guy emerged from the jungle and he's screaming at us. He's got a machete in his hand and he's screaming at us in Spanish. And I said to Jim, I was like, is that guy as angry as he sounds? He was like, yes, he is. I was like, what's he saying? He's like, he's going to kill us. And I was like, yes. So you've got to think that Jim is like 60 odd years old and he's not fighting anybody.
Yeah.
I think Mayor might have had a go, but he wasn't really a fighting guy, you know. So I'm thinking, what are we going to do? And this guy's going, you come over here taking photographs of us. The white devils come over here taking videos of us. You put it on the internet and make us look stupid. I should just kill you all while you're here. Nobody would know. And he went on and on and on in Spanish. These are just the bits that I got. We were there for a good few minutes.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, look, if he comes any closer, I'm going to pick up that branch and I'm going to do my best to stop the machete getting near us. I'm just going to focus on the machete. That means it's up to you two to take the guy down. I'm going to stop the machete from hitting us. You take him down. At that point, another boat turned up and the guy was like, oh yeah, he's just a local idiot. He went into prison and then he came out of prison. The local village didn't want him here anymore, so they just kicked him out into the jungle and you're in his front room, basically. So, so that was not pleasant. And this is the stuff I'm telling to my wife, like, oh, we didn't have any food today because the locals ate all our food. We didn't see any animals. Oh, somebody's just showed me a video of a guy who's been a elephant poacher who half a mile from where we camped had been disemboweled by an elephant. And I
Oh
was
my
getting
God.
shown videos of this half a mile from where we were. We didn't see any elephants. We saw elephant tracks and we saw
Yeah.
elephant dung, but we didn't see any elephants. We got shown a picture of a lowland gorilla dead in the back of a pickup truck that they were taking for bushmeat, and a manatee. But we didn't see any of these things. So I'd been feeding my wife with all this information and telling her the stuff we've been eating. Um, I've got a video of the Danish guy eating a local delicacy, which is okra soup. And basically, it was like eating snot. It was like eating phlegm. He's picking up a spoon of it and he's just going, well,
Yeah,
I tried to
I,
eat it,
I
mate,
know
and it
you
was,
sent me the video. I saw it. I can't get the videos to work today, unfortunately, but it literally did look like snot. It was horrible.
it, it is awful. It's awful. You can see I can picture of Jimmy drinking. It's at the bottom,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. Let's have a look. Let me just push some buttons. Go to that. Anyone in particular you want?
Yeah, they got Jim drinking from a vine.
I don't know if that's on here.
Oh, you're not there anymore. I
I
wouldn't
might.
have to it.
I don't know if I've missed that
No,
one or you've missed that one.
this is the way that you share a picture.
Um,
If we do that, slides and PDFs.
yeah, you
Not
can.
my
Yeah, you can.
picture.
If you share your screen, I mean, I'll come on, take mine off now, and you should be able to. If you can find it, we can pop it up on screen.
Oh, I have to upload a file apparently.
If you can see it,
Sorry,
you can share your screen.
stop.
Let's go through some comments quickly as well. What we got? Dan said, I went on holiday, seeing 3 types of lizards just at the hotel. Nice. That's what I'm hoping. I hope I'm going to find loads of stuff. The best thing about going on holiday, man, I'm catching geckos with the kids. I remember when I went to Florida and I just spent all my time catching the little green anoles, little green ones, little brown ones. I love that.
Do you know in Gran Canaria, the green anoles are non-natively established on Gran Canaria because the golf clubs imported palm trees from Florida. The green anoles hitched a lift and they live happily on the golf courses in Florida, but they can't expand their range because only on the golf courses are the places watered and humidified. Everywhere else is just kind of volcanic and dusty. So they live wonderful lives on the golf
Just on the
courses.
golf courses. Very nice,
Yeah.
very nice. Going back to Equatorial Guinea as well. You have got on here. There was no diesel, just beer, and you almost missed your plane home.
Well, I'll come to that. Well, so the worst, I've saved the worst till last.
Yeah, of course.
Because this is the worst thing that happened to us. So Equatorial Guinea has only been open to tourists for a few months, less than a year. And it's because the old dictator president, is dying, and his son, who's some international playboy, has decided to open the country up to tourism. This guy's a bit of a wide boy. He had, I think it was £6 million worth of supercars seized in Switzerland, and he's apparently got loads of dodgy dealings going on. But anyway, he's opened the country to tourism, and part of that was to tell all of the military police to be nice to tourists, which is great if the word has filtered through.
Yeah.
Except for us, at one point, it didn't. So usually you drive along and there's military roadblocks in the way. When I talk about military roadblocks, I mean a branch across 2 oil drums, yeah?
Yeah.
And there's some spotty young kid in a camouflage T-shirt with an AK-47.
Yeah.
And he comes up to the Vic and he's like, "Who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? Show me your paperwork. What football team do you support?" Bit of banter, off you go. Yeah, right. Then that happens like every 30 or 40 miles. Fine. Roads are weird. The roads are absolutely perfect. The whole of the island has been perfectly tarmacked, and the only car you can get over there is Toyota. There are a couple of others, but only Toyota imports into there, but everybody else imports their own if there's anything unusual.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, but they don't understand roads really, or they don't want to understand roads. These new roads have been built, but if they don't go in the direction they want them to go, they're not going to go up to the next roundabout and turn round. They just drive the wrong way up the motorway, which is crazy. So, well, whatever, you do you. But anyway, we arrived at this one roadblock, and as soon as I arrived at it, I knew this guy was an arsehole. He just looked mean, right?
Yeah.
He's got this big growth on his face like that. I don't know what it was, like whether it was his twin brother or something, but there's massive growth on his face, and he looked mean. And he was like, "Yeah, what are you doing here? You know, what are you doing?" And you got to remember that we're with the head of the government's forestry commission at this time. Yeah, trying to get a fixer that was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. But anyway, um, and we showed him all the paperwork, and he was like, "No, no, no, this will not do. This is very bad. You have not done this correctly. This is big trouble." So one of our guys was like, "Okay, how much is this going to cost us for it to be okay?" "You offend me. This is terrible. How dare you? You must follow me." So he takes us off the road. We had to follow him down into this military compound that looked like something out of Mad Max. It's just like grey concrete buildings, people standing around with guns, naked kids running around with a cat on a piece of string, burnt out, tanks and military vehicles that looked like they hadn't been anywhere for years. It was frightening. Yeah. Then they take our passports off us, and that's something you never do. So if you go anywhere and they want your passport, you have not got them. Yeah. But our guide told them that we'd got passports and we'd showed them before. So when we got into the military compound, we had to give him these passports. Don't ever give anybody your passport. Keep it with you. Don't leave it in your hotel. Don't, keep it inside a plastic bag in your pocket, because if it goes sweaty or if you end up wading through rivers like we had to, you ruin your passport and then you are in trouble. Plastic bag inside your pocket. Don't let it go anywhere. Take photocopies of it and show them the photocopies. Anyway, took our passports off us. Big problem, big mistake. Pushed us into this room. And I know I said we were held at gunpoint. That's not strictly true. The guy who wasn't letting us leave didn't point the gun at us, but he had a big gun. Yeah. And we
There's
couldn't
not much
leave.
of a difference if there's a bloke with a gun, whether it's pointing at you or it's pointing at the wall slightly to the left of you.
Well, I'd just like it to be clear, because I don't want anybody to think I'm over exaggerating here. Right. So we're in this room, and I don't know if you've seen Black Hawk Down, when they're just screaming at each other in their
Yeah.
native language and nobody knows what they're saying. And, you know, they might have been just discussing the weather, but it really did sound like they were plotting to kill us, right? And this was in their native language. This wasn't in Spanish. They've got two native language, the boobies and the somebody else. I remember the boobies one, of course, but I can't remember the
Of
other one.
course.
But the guy that we'd got with us from the government, when you're on an airplane and there's loads of turbulence, so you look at the air stewardess, and if she's not frightened, you think it's cool, because if she's not frightened, you're okay.
Yeah.
So I looked at this guy who was with us, and he was shitting his pants. And at that point, I'm like, "We have Houston, we have a problem." And I'm looking at him, and he's talking to them in their native language. And again, I'm thinking, have we been set up here? Have we been kidnapped? Have we been guided here? Right? Because at this point, a lot has gone wrong, and it wasn't pleasant half the time. And I just didn't trust this guy. And yeah, we were there for a good couple of hours. So I've got my phone underneath the desk, underneath the table where I'm sitting, and I'm texting my wife Vicky, and she already knows about all the shit that's gone on that's been bad. She knows about the machete man, she knows about the jungle, she knows about the bush meat, yeah. And she'd been texting me saying, "Look, you've only got a few guys to go. Keep your head down, get on the plane, come home, it'll all be over." I was like, I don't know why it's so bad. You know, I thought it'd be great, but it's awful, and I'm not coping very well. I'm not having a good time. Don't worry, you just keep your head up and come home. You know, she was in bits here. She didn't tell me, but she was in bits. She thought we were going to get chopped up. So I'm texting her under the table, going, look, we've been put in this military compound. This is the last kind of place I know that we were.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure where we are, and I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen next, but I need you to know what's occurring in case something goes badly wrong. Then at this point, Vicky doesn't hear from me for 24 hours because we haven't got a
Gee.
phone signal. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So as far as she's concerned, we're either hanging up or in some bloody gulag in Equatorial Guinea. Yeah. So we're there for ages, and I'm saying to Jim, like, this looks bad. And he was like, well, it's not good, but I think we'll be all right. It don't look too bad. And I'm pretty sure he was just appeasing me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure we were in a lot of trouble. Eventually, to cut a long story short, some kid comes in with a fax machine,
Right. And
plugs
this
in
is
the fax machine.
2023.
Yeah. Comes in with a fax machine, plugs in this fax machine, out comes this piece of paper. Guy rips it off. The guy with the thing rips it off with the mean face, hands
Yeah.
it to us. He goes, there you go. Now you've got all your paperwork. So you had a good time. Where are you going next? What's, just change like that. Nice as pie, right? I nearly wet my pants in tears, right? Because I realized I was going to live. And
Yeah.
he sent us on our way with an armed escort. And we're not sure to this day whether or not the armed escort was to protect us or whether it was to make sure we didn't get up to no good.
Yeah.
So our next port of call was to go to this island that was supposedly luxurious. They'd got all these chalets and villas. And we went over on the boat. It was a rickety old boat that got diesel in a jerry can that was open, that was just splashing everywhere, filled up the bottom of the boat with, sorry, not diesel, petrol, sorry,
Yeah.
filling up the boat with petrol. And they were all just sat there smoking. So I was like, yep, today I die. Today's
Yeah.
the day that we
Viking,
die.
Viking funeral.
You know, this is one of the stories where anybody sensible would have said, no, I'm not getting in that boat. But we were in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got there, went to the chalet, and it turns out that the whole island hasn't had any power for a couple of weeks. Yeah. There's no main supply. It's all done with big diesel generators. So the school was closed. But sorry, the school had no power. The hospital had no power, and all of our chalets had no power. So we were, showering just with a jug, and it was pretty bad. But thankfully, oh, and sorry, there was no food on the island either. There was no food. We were able to eat what we'd taken over with us, which was a few bread rolls and some crisps. Somebody managed to find us some chicken after going around. Yeah, managed to find us some chicken, so we did get that. But thankfully, the boat had been asked to bring emergency supplies to the island. So we had an emergency supply of beer. We had beer.
Fantastic.
That's what they wanted on the island from this boat. So we had beer, so we were okay. And yeah, again, it was just a terrible, terrible situation. And it could have been idyllic. It could have been beautiful, but it was just horrible, horrible. So the guy you see in the picture was the armed guard that we had, and at the end of it, he wanted to take our photo. So he put his arm around me, and I put my hand around his waist and realised I'd got my hand on his gun holster.
Yeah, you can see his gun on his hip there.
Yeah. So yeah, thankfully he didn't take to that too unkindly. He just laughed and realised we were stupid white folk and
Yeah.
didn't know what the SP was. Yeah, but by this point I'd had enough. By this point I was done with Equatorial Guinea. I just wanted to go home. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the contacts that we had there that we'd met near the airport had invited us out to dinner the night before. So we went out for dinner, and it absolutely pissed it down, like stair rod pissed it down, which we'd experienced a few times, but it was just the icing on the cake. And we sat around having dinner. This guy's from South America somewhere. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Panama. And I was trying to find out what brought him to Equatorial Guinea and what he was doing there. And I was like, so what do you do? And he was like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, but what exactly? He was like, I'm a businessman. And this was a big guy, yeah,
Yeah.
big, mean looking guy. And his wife sort of looking at us going, yeah. And so I didn't ask him what he did for a living, but it was something seriously
Something,
shady.
something that you shouldn't
And
have been doing.
I think so. But we ended up staying in our hotel, and we got up the next morning, had breakfast with these guys. And he said, listen, I've got a friend at the airport. You only need to arrive 15 minutes before your plane. You know, you're already checked in. They've already got your luggage. We've dropped your luggage off. You just need to get there 15 minutes before the plane. And I'm like, this does not make me feel comfortable. I do not want to miss this plane. There isn't another plane for a week. I do
Yeah.
not want to miss this plane. So we sat on this beach waiting for a burger to be brought out to us or whatever it was they were bringing. And we wait and we wait and we wait. And the time's ticking on, and I'm watching my watch. And you know, you're supposed to be at the airport for an international flight, like 2.5, 3 hours before your flight.
Yeah.
3 hours went, still sat on the beach. And we're half an hour away from the airport. 2 hours came and went, and I'm still sat on the beach. 1 hour, and I'm still sat on the beach waiting for a bloody burger to come. This burger turns up, and I just inhaled it. And I was like, right, should we go? He's like, yeah, in a while. So we had another beer, right? And the clock's ticking on. And in the end, he's like, yeah, come on, then let's go. So he get in his truck, and he drives us to this to the airport, kicks us out, lingers for ages saying goodbye. And I get into the airport, and it's rammed, right? There's queues upon queues upon queues for security. And we're standing in this queue, and I'm watching, and the rage in me is just building. Yeah. And I cannot stay in this country for one more minute than I have to, right? And I've got no punchline for you, because we made it onto the plane by the skin of our teeth, and we made it home. And even Jim, who's been to some places and has reported back that he's had some bad times, even Jim said that was the worst kind of field trip he'd ever been on. And he's kind of upbeat, you know. He normally does the best to enjoy it, but I have to say that I was too old, too out of shape, and too much of a miserable arse to enjoy a trip like that. I'm sure if somebody younger and tougher went, somebody who's not used to the luxury that I'm used to now that I'm married with a lovely wife who looks after me and makes sure that my life is pleasurable and not as feral as it used to be. I'm sure if I wasn't so, you know, so wussy, it would have been a good trip. But honestly, I hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
Hated every minute
It
of it.
doesn't. It doesn't sound great, but it does make a great story.
A good story. My wife says I can only go to Benidorm now.
Yeah. Well, David Kerridge there has said, yeah, but a weekend in Blackpool is still worse.
Probably. Mate, honestly, it was. I haven't even told you. I've told you about when we. Oh, I haven't told you I saw a leatherback turtle. We saw a leatherback turtle, yeah,
Okay.
at night, which was great.
At night.
We'd gone to this. That's when they come into the beach to lay their eggs. So we'd gone to this leatherback turtle research centre, which is basically a shanty town in the middle of the jungle,
Yeah.
on the edge of a on the edge of a on the edge of the sea by the beach. And there's this kind of platform that they'd built. So we decided to pitch our tents on the platform. So Jim pitched his tent, Mayor pitched his tent, and then I saw a hammock. So I was like, whoa, I'm having the hammock. I go hammock camping. I enjoy hammock camping. So I was like, right, I'm having the hammock. And it was great. I lay in the hammock. I watched the sunset. I listened to the noise of the beach. I watched the sun go down. And then at 3:00 in the morning, a tropical storm came through sideways. Yeah, right. Drenched the shit out of everything, including me. They were all in their tents asleep. They didn't care. I was in a hammock getting drenched. I had to lie on the floor and roll myself in my tent that wasn't pitched. Just roll myself in a waterproof cover so that I didn't get wet. That was awful. Um, Lizards. We saw some lizards. We saw a load of red-headed agamas on this beach where it was a fishing village, and there was a whole mound of seashells, like seafood shells. So
Yeah.
they went fishing. They ate the shells. They threw them on this mound, and all of these red-headed agamas were running around on the seashells. So it makes me wonder whether or not we're providing adequate substrates for red-headed agamas, because of course they live on seashells, don't they? In the wild.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do then now. So yeah, it was the whole of every city we went through was just really pretty bad. Pretty
So
bad.
you would probably say it's not on the list to go back then.
You know what? If you just want to go see reptiles, there's so many places you could go. You don't have to subject yourself to that kind of discomfort unless somebody's
Yeah.
paying you to. I mean, if I got a job running a research project out there, I'd be like, yeah, okay, you've got the support of a big organization and the protection, and you know, you're pretty much babysat through it, and you're almost untouchable. Just to go there for a good time, yeah, go somewhere else, man. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Or if you, I don't know, maybe you can sort out a better fix than we did. I would hope so. Maybe that's what you should do. Move to Equatorial Guinea, set yourself up as a tour guide in Equatorial Guinea, while it's now becoming a tourism destination.
Yeah, to be honest, you haven't sold it to me. Out of all the places we mentioned today, I think that's the bottom of
Right.
the list.
It was bad. I haven't even told you half of it. I could tell you, we could carry on, but it just gets worse. It's just
Yeah.
bad. And half the stuff I've just been moaning about, like, who makes a pillow by putting a piece of spongy stuff and putting it inside a carrier bag? That was a pillow, right? In a hotel. Um, Two of the hotels we went to had a shower curtain on a rail that was so big it fell outside the shower and just filled the whole room full of
Just soak
water
the floor.
while you were having a shower. Yeah, that was bad. We went to a restaurant, sat down, waitress comes over, took our order. Three-quarters of an hour later, we're like, "Where's our order?" She was like, "Oh yeah, we haven't got any of that stuff." So I was like, "Right, okay, I'm hungry." Ordered something else, right? Went away, and after about half an hour, I was like, "Don't tell me." So I went over to her. I was like, "You haven't got anything, have you?" And she was like, "No, we haven't got any food." It's
That's mad.
just,
That's
just
mad.
mad. Um, what else? What else? Just loads of it.
Yeah.
Loads of it.
No, to be fair, that sounds yes. What a life you have lived so far, Tony. And I
Well,
thank you very much for sharing just a few of the snippets. Yeah, it's yeah, mad. I'm lost for words, to be honest.
it was crazy. The trip was mental. And previous to that, I would have said, "Yeah, man of the world, been around a few places. I can cope. Let's go to Africa. Let's go anywhere. I can deal with it." No, I can't. I'm a softie. I'm a softie. I like my luxury. I like nice food. I like proper restaurants. I like to be warm and dry. And I don't think I want to go there again. The problem is that the next CITES COP, the next meeting, international meeting of CITES, is held in Uzbekistan, which is the most the most numerous recruiting ground for Al Qaeda.
Great, just what you want.
So,
Just what you want.
so I'm trying to convince my wife to let me go to Uzbekistan because they only ever open every 3 years, and this year's a very important one. The Americans have proposed that you should list and regulate every species of Chelonia. Every tortoise and turtle should be highly regulated by CITES. Do you know why? Because their officials aren't competent enough to be able to tell one species from another. So they want them all put on.
Great.
So, I mean, Trump's doing an interesting job over in America at the moment, but I think I'm pleased that all of the people that are proposing this stuff are probably going to be out of a job before CITES comes along. It sounds like they're all going to be out of a job.
It does
So,
indeed. It does indeed. Right, Tony, I'm going to wrap up the podcast. As we've been going for nearly 2.5 hours. I think this is the longest episode we've ever done. But I
oh,
have
bloody
enjoyed
hell.
every single second of it. There's no wrap-up question, as you've been on and you've answered the wrap-up question previously. Is there anything you want to say or anything you want to point anybody in the direction of before we finish up today?
No, just sorry for waffling on. I didn't realise it'd been going on for 2.5 hours.
I don't apologise. It's been fantastic.
That's impressed even me that I can waffle on about reptile field trips for 2.5 hours. No, just to reiterate, please fill in the Worldwide Reptile Super Survey. Just write it in. Just poke it into Google, you'll find us. Poke it into any platform, you'll find us. And brace yourself for the positive list position. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'm not even going to kick you out today. I'm going to finish the podcast now because I've got nothing left to say. It's been an absolutely fantastic podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to every one of your stories, and I'm sure we could listen to many, many more. And the people in the chat are also saying that they've loved every minute of it. So, Tony, thank you very much. And everybody listening, thank you very much as well. This has been Tony. I've been Ben, and I will see you in a couple of weeks for the next ReptiChat podcast. But until then, goodbye.